It is 6:30 p.m. on August 7th, and I will call to order the meeting of the Select Board here in Manchester by the Sea. And I will start with a roll call vote for attendance. Brian?
Yes, I'm here.
Kathy?
Here.
Becky?
Here.
And is Ann here?
You're muted, Ann.
Oh, she's online.
I'm here,
There
as
you
I
are.
always am,
Okay.
but here isn't there.
Somewhere out there, okay, thank you. All right, so we have a quorum in attendance of the Select Board. Before I go to the agenda, I will first solicit public comments for any non-agenda items. Is there anyone who has anything that they'd like to say? Hearing none, I will pass over the action items for now and go directly to the first event on the agenda. And these are always very pleasurable times, and there's a sea of blue out there. But we have a swearing-in ceremony, and I assume the master of ceremonies for this is it you, Chief?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, well, thanks everyone for being here tonight. And again, we have another historic swearing in of an officer of the Manchester Police Department. After 26 weeks, we're here to swear in Officer Ron Ramus. You want to step up front? As the newest full-time member of our department. Officer Ramus follows in the footsteps of his uncle, Chief Ronald Ramus, who's retired and served the town for well over 30 years and 22 years as chief, which is a long time, and I hope I would never serve that long. Officer Ramus has served the town in many different roles here. He started as an auxiliary police officer and went to a full-time dispatcher, a reserve police officer, and now, again, the newest full-time member of our department. Officer Ramus is a lifelong resident of Manchester by the Sea, a graduate of the North Shore Technical High School in Masonry in 2008. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in criminal justice from Salem State University and is an EMT, certified EMT. So at this time, if Diane could issue the oath of office to Officer Ramus.
Do you solemnly swear that you will uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the bylaws for the town of Manchester by the Sea, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a full-time police officer to the best of your ability?
Yes, I do. Congratulations, Ron. So finally, I'd like to ask Ron's wife, Sammy, and his daughter, Rosemary, to come up for the ceremonial pinning of his new patrol officer's badge. And don't stop.
On purpose, at least.
There you go. Congratulations. Thank the Select Board for allowing us this opportunity. Again, it's a pinnacle in an officer's career. It was something that they remember. I remember mine a long time ago. So thank everyone for coming and attending. And that concludes our short little ceremony.
Thank you all.
Great,
Sign the book.
thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Ron.
Thank you.
That's right, we have more.
Yeah, maybe more.
That's right. Stick around.
At least it's early.
I know, you don't get to go to the party.
Right. Okay,
Sure.
Don't forget to smile.
No, you have to.
Thank you.
okay, that's fine. Good. All right, next on the agenda are, well, it was just previous, there were action items. Are there any action items from the Select Board for the sheet that was distributed dated the 2nd of August?
It looks like everything that was targeted for today is on the
Is
agenda,
on the
I
agenda,
believe,
yeah.
so I think we're.
Yeah.
I think we're.
Anything that's going to shift around in the future dates, I don't think so. So we're good for now?
Yes.
I want my name off of that.
Okay. The first discussion item for this evening is parking and other enforcement approaches. And I don't know, Greg, do you want to kind of start this? This is everybody will have something to say here. But
Oh,
Greg,
sure,
do you want
thank
to
you, John.
set the stage?
May I interrupt? I think that's scheduled for
Oh,
6:40.
I'm sorry, 6:40, and where are we? We're at 6:36.
Yep, good catch. A little early.
That's correct. So a little bit off, so let's see, why don't we go to consent agenda? We've got some minutes, not all of them listed, but some of them. May 23rd is not here, but June 12th, June 20th, and July 6th.
We'll need to vote on them separately because I
fine.
need to abstain from June 12th.
Okay, all
And I
right,
need to abstain from July 6th.
okay, that's fine. We'll,
Motion to approve June 12th of 23 minutes.
in a second,
Second,
okay. Any further discussion on the minutes of the 12th? All those in favor? Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Abstain.
Becky,
Yes.
and Ann.
yes.
And John says yes. So, okay, the 12th is set.
Motion to approve June 20th, 2023 minutes.
Entertain a second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, ready to vote? Ryan
Yes.
and Kathy
Yes.
and Becky
Yes.
and Ann
Yes.
and John votes yes. Okay. Entertain a motion for the July 6th minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes for July 6th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on the July 6th minutes? Okay, ready to vote? Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Becky,
Abstain?
and Ann.
Yes.
And John votes yes. Okay, that takes care of the minutes. And 1 minute.
Coast to coast?
Something like that. Let's see. The Coast to Cure, the bike ride. There was an attachment in there. Any discussion on that, which is an annual event?
Motion to approve Coast to the Cure bike ride for 2023.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Prepared to vote? Becky,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
and John says yes. Okay, that's the bike ride. The last thing under the consent agenda are committee appointments. They're here somewhere, where they're located.
On the last
Did
page
you
of the
get to?
package?
Yeah, I gotta go all the way.
Is that 59?
Is it, I don't
Oh,
know.
no. Let's see.
Here we go.
Page 58, I think.
58. Okay. For the tree warden, community preservation committee, open space committee, and two, community preservation. Any discussion on any of those appointments, reappointments? Can we do this collectively? I
Okay.
think so?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Have a motion?
Motion to approve the committee appointments as noted in the meeting posting of Monday, August 7th, 2023 for the select board.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Ready to vote? Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
and John votes yes.
Okay.
There's another minute. Okay,
We've got 30 seconds.
I will just wait.
What?
Nothing.
That's a cold seat there.
No, I'm actually hot.
No, but Becky's,
Right here is the
It's,
cold
yeah.
seat.
Oh, okay.
If you want to swap, we
But
can
then-
certainly do so.
No.
and then right on top of it.
I brought my sweater.
Okay, so we will go to the first discussion item of the evening, which is parking and other enforcement approaches. And Greg, you were starting to talk about that just a little bit, I think.
Oh, sure, thank you, John. So this is prompted by a few emails from residents that we've received concerning the approach to enforcement. There are a few tickets that have been given out where some of the recipients felt that a waiver would have been appropriate to provide. And so we wanted to put this up for a topic for discussion and have you review our procedures. We have both Chief Fitzgerald and Town Clerk Diane Bucco with us. Both are involved. Diane is Town Clerk, serves as the parking clerk, and reviews and rules on any appeals of a violation or a ticket that's been issued. So I know that they have some recommendations for you, and we can get into that. But before that, perhaps it makes sense for you and the board to have sort of an intro conversation, and then we can go from there.
Good. Anybody from the board want to start out either with comments or questions from either the chief or Diane with regard to some of the things that have gone on recently?
Yeah, one of the again, I can't say they're facts, but as it was laid out, one individual in town, their daughter got a parking ticket because they failed to put a resident sticker on the car. The car is registered and insured in Manchester, but just failed in a timely fashion to take off for, I guess, her dorm parking and put the resident parking sticker on it. My feelings of this is that we do have an appeals process, and if we're not gonna, I mean, that to me is grounds for an appeal, and I think it's a valid reason to negate the parking ticket. If we're not, I mean, I can't think of a better set of facts, if that's what they are, to warrant the appeal and the adjudication that we got. You know, I got a parking ticket on Central Street. I don't agree that it should be 2-hour parking on Central Street. That nap was very expensive, but I'm not gonna appeal it. I mean, that was my fault. I knew, okay? But if we're not going to listen to what seems to be a valid appeal process, then let's just drop the opportunity to file for appeal. If it's black and white, then that's the end of it. If there is gray, then I think that those facts, and I understand, Diane, that you have to, you know, you're the ultimate arbiter on something like this.
Yeah.
But it just seems to me, and this is not a resident versus non-resident issue, okay? This is, an example might be in a resident parking only, someone has a party, an all-day party, and a guest parks in a resident only and receives a parking ticket. Now that's something I think is debatable. Should the host have told them not to park there, or do you? Okay, that's something I think there's a lot of leeway there. But a car that's registered and insured and paying excise tax in Manchester because they failed to put the sticker on in a timely fashion because they were away at school, I think that deserves some consideration. That's just my feelings.
If I may.
Yes.
And I don't agree with that. And I think that if we, and I'd like to hear Diane's perspective on this as well as our chief and lieutenant, because as you know, we've had so many complaints about lack of enforcement, lack of ticketing, and it's perception, right or wrong, that's the perception. And I certainly understand how, okay, I volunteer in town a lot. If one of my family members got a ticket for parking incorrectly, I would expect them to pay for it. This is where we have to be so cautious about forgiving some tickets and not others, because if we are perceived in any way of being biased and not painting everybody with the same brush. Yes, we live in a small town, but we also live in a time of super litigation. You know, I don't like the way this happened. I'm going to court. I don't agree with it. So I just think that if everybody falls under the same guidelines or rules, as these are rules, and I'm just, okay, how many years have these people lived in town? How many years have they known about putting the sticker on the car? How many years? So it's not as if they just moved to town 6 months ago and didn't realize it. They've lived in town quite some time, and they know the process. I think anybody who's asking for special dispensation, for whatever reason, if you're a volunteer, whatever, I think to ask that the rules not apply to you as an individual is problematic in how that can accelerate and escalate. That's my 2 cents.
So John, if I could,
You may, please, Kathy.
I agree with both of you, and here's why. You're saying different things, okay? Each of you is saying something different. So what I heard Brian say was he wants to understand the waiver process, because any set of rules, there's always fringe cases, right? And there should be a waiver process, and I think there is one. They go to the town clerk. So maybe we could, when you speak to us, Diane, maybe you could help us understand what are some conditions under which you would issue a waiver, okay? The situation you're describing, Becky, totally agree with you. Nobody should be asking for special treatment just because they're a long-term resident. They know the rules. However, you also just cited a very interesting case where suppose somebody did just move to town, right? And they've been here a month, maybe they haven't had the time to get their car registered yet. I don't know if that would be one of the conditions that Diane would, you know, issue a waiver on. But I do think you're both right, but you're just saying different things.
Yes.
And so I'd like to hear from, I think the police officers just have to go by what they see on the car. If they don't see a car, you ticket it. Even if you know that car belongs to a resident, you've gotta follow the law. But I think maybe we could all better understand what the waiver process entails. And I also think it might be helpful to make sure our signage is clear. I don't know that all of our signage is really clear. Does it say resident parking only? Does it say resident sticker required? So I just think the more we set clear expectations, ask everybody to follow the rules, understand the waiver process, you might go with the thoughts.
I would like to add one more, and it's, we're drawn to a small town for many different reasons, absolutely. I also want to ask the amount of time that would be added if we're asking people to, okay, check registrations, check, what you do anyway, I'm sure, but, you know, do we validate whether a car is supposed to have a registration sticker? How much time are we asking our police officers or our town clerk or the office there
Okay,
to add into this?
may I?
Yes, ma'am.
The parking enforcement officer just enforces, writes tickets as they appear. That's fine. It's the question of either somebody new or somebody who's been at college and hasn't thought about it. I think we can afford to make a special accommodation for the first time somebody gets a ticket for parking in a resident-only space, thinking, well, I'm a resident, everybody ought to know that, or, you know, how do I prove I'm a resident if I'm new? I would like everyone else, I would like to hear from Diane as to what her standards are, but I think the town can afford to be a little more generous with residents, all residents, regardless of how much time they've spent, contributing to the town or whether they're brand new. And I think this should be a one-time exemption. If you have to come in to talk to Diane and explain, then you should remember to put your sticker on, and the next time, there shouldn't be such leniency. Thank you.
Okay, I think we ought to hear, there are several different issues that are circulating around the parking thing. Right now, we're talking about, well, we call it appeals for lack of anything else. And so Diane, maybe you ought to address that, including how much time you spend on this. Because everybody's got a story. I think we know this. Anybody who shows up there and they don't know anything about appeals process, if they feel they've got a case, they will show up at your window and you hear it. I don't know if you hear one a day, one a month. I don't know what the story is. Right now, I guess in general, you kind of treat it as black and white. But I think we need to hear your thoughts on how it's working and how it's worked in your past, et cetera.
It is by far an easier process now than it was before. There are less appeals than there were before. There are, people get a ticket, most of the time they've done something wrong. It's a rule. I'm a town clerk as well as a parking clerk, so I follow the rules. There's always exceptions. When exceptions come, we can abate the ticket. Once a ticket's written, it costs the town money, period, whether it's abated or not. Not a ton of money, but every ticket is gonna cost you something. The amount of tickets you abate, you're still paying something. But the bottom line, that's the town. I'm the parking clerk. I follow the rules that I've been given. We've gone over them. We've gone through signage over the past couple of years. Everything is really quite well signed, resident parking only, 2-hour parking. People know about the business placards, so business employees are not getting tickets anymore because they buy a placard, they park back here. Residents know about the visitor passes. If they have a friend or a family come over, they have the visitor pass, they can use resident parking on street, hasn't been a problem. So the appeals, the amount of appeals that come in are much less than they did before. Unless it's some real reason to appeal a ticket, mine goes back to the rule. If there's a rule, you're supposed to follow it. And I just enforce those rules. If I got a ticket, or my child got a ticket, many tickets actually, they don't get waived. They don't get appealed in any other town or community. I've had a Beverly ticket, my son's been to Boston, New York City. You get tickets, you pay it. It's an accident, you made a mistake. That's how I feel, really.
Could you give us some examples of any conditions that would warrant an abatement or where you have, just so we
Yep,
that's
for
what we're trying to
a
understand.
new resident moved in, although it's amazing to me how many residents move in and the first thing they do is come and get their sticker. So whether they're renters or they're home buyers, someone's telling them they need a sticker. But I have had some that said, our second car, we didn't get a sticker for, we didn't know, we didn't understand. When did you move in? I usually check when they came in, if a sticker was issued to them, et cetera, that would be a waiver. Other waivers, more so in the time limited area are where they could get waivers, that we've had people say that they were over the 2 hours, but they can prove that they were here, there, and another little place. I get to follow a whole map and
A lot of people come back and if there's a space ahead of them, they move the space ahead of them. And what we used to do a long time ago was chalk the tires or take a picture of the valve stem or where the valve stem is. But it's become illegal to chalk tires at this point. So now we take a picture of the valve stem.
right, but it is possible that valve stem could be
Could be the
in
same
the
spot.
same spot, and so those are really long-winded deals.
So a nap is not invalid.
Now we do it. And the majority of tickets are actually just paid. I think that, you get a ticket, you darn it, they caught me or whatever. Other than that, other examples of appeals, I should have reread.
I mean, a person can also take if Diane doesn't abate the ticket, they can also ask for a judicial review, which is basically they take it to the clerk magistrate and plead their case, and it will cost them money to do that, so that's why people probably don't do it. And they just stop it with Diane's decision. I mean, it's right in the law.
That is, my decision is final, and
Yeah.
if they wanna go to the court, they can. So the philosophy is just basically unless there's an extenuating circumstance.
So how many of these are you dealing with in a week? Yeah.
I go by kind of month.
All right, that's fine.
So in the past month, I think we had 26 appeals.
Well, that's every day, so it's one day.
Six were issued as abatements.
What were those that were abated?
The ones that were not abated, they had no sticker, or they're a resident and a time limited, the placard was not visible, or they just didn't have an excuse, meaning I was just running in for a minute, or I came really early so I wouldn't bother the other people, but it was 9 AM. It's not really early. But I don't think of good reasons. I can run downstairs, but you don't want me to do that.
All right, well, that's, I mean, that's quite a few, that's, and everyone has a story, so it's not like 30 seconds or a minute and you're done.
No,
The story.
no, you read through it, you check, you know, all the tickets that come to me, the cars are always registered. It's never been a non-registered, some are from out of town, a lot of residents. So I don't really look for something like that, I just look for, is there a reason to excuse this ticket? You mentioned some sort of, like a leeway or a one-off, give someone a warning. My first response is, okay, so now I'm gonna take these tickets and I'm gonna put them into a database so that I can remember whether this driver or this license plate or this whatever already got a warning. Like, and is it just for a year or is it per summer, per month? I mean, I don't know how to do that because the license, it all kind of blurs to me. I just look at the, you know, what the issue is, and if it's valid, I'll abate it. If it's not, I'm just gonna say you have to pay the ticket.
John, may I ask a question?
Yes.
So with as many of these requests for abatement that we get that come in, and yeah, I'm going somewhere with this, and the big ask throughout town for more enforcement or more tickets, we have one person who's requested an abatement and been unhappy with the outcome. Do we make modifications because we've
Excuse me,
had,
that's a
excuse me,
mischaracterization.
you're not, John,
Yeah,
wait your
Please,
turn.
yeah.
So we've had, in any case, where I'm going is we have many people who come in and then don't come further with this. Diane?
Yes, Diane.
Sorry,
Everyone that I don't abate is not happy.
of course not.
So
Yeah.
just, no one's happy to pay. So I just wanted to add that in. I make a lot of people unhappy in this part of the job.
But in general, I mean, about a quarter of them you do abate. You said out of 26, there are half a dozen or so.
Yep.
And so I'm assuming you're dealing with the facts, not necessarily, you know, how the story is told or anything like that.
Just the
But
facts.
there are those,
Just the facts. And I don't know all the residents.
You got
but,
a bar at a certain level where you say above that, yes, and below that, no. You don't reach that level, and that's where you're at. And we as, you know, on the select board and also the police department, we have to, in general, trust your judgment as to what makes sense for all of these, because there are situations where you do offer abatements. And
Yes.
I don't know all the circumstances of any of them, but there are circumstances there. So it's not like we don't have an appeals process or something, it's there. And people are successful.
And I think the way we handle it is similar to the way we handle motor vehicle citations in court. It's up, goes to the clerk magistrate, Mark's there, and they say, Mark says the officer's report, and they say their case, and then the clerk magistrate decides based on the circumstances of the motor vehicle stuff. It's similar to the, it's
Mhm.
almost identical to what we do in court for that, what Diane does.
Okay. Other comments here, or?
Yeah, we've been slightly conflating moving violations and parking violations. And I think most of the complaints about a lack of enforcement, with the exception of most of the serious complaints about lack of enforcement, have to do with moving violations. The lack of enforcement on parking violations has more to do with the lack of, the fact that we have only one, parking enforcement, officer who takes days off from time to time. And that leads to a lack of parking enforcement, but I would like people to think separately about moving violations, which are a safety issue, and parking violations, which are an inconvenience.
Yeah, well, I think we're dealing with really the parking issue here primarily. I don't. Moving on the, would you put moving on this agenda as well, or?
No, but I think that.
I think it's just,
Well, I
my-
thought
think-
we were gonna talk about moving
can, yeah.
violations too, but.
To Ann's point, at this point, I think is that enforcement becomes a general term. And right now, the subset at this point is traffic, is parking, not.
right,
not
we're
traffic.
talking about that now.
That says parking and other.
And
Yes,
yeah,
it's
I guess
other,
it is
yeah.
traffic as well. I might ask the chief, we've got one parking enforcement officer, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And I read some of the material there. At one point, we had 2 or 3.
Yeah, and we weren't
It
really
wasn't,
budgeted for, it. We've asked for more money and then when we
Okay,
get the
alright.
budget back.
So it's a budget issue.
It's cut. So we have $12,000 for parking enforcement. And that has to go from May to May, well, in those seasonal periods. So we run it from May, like 15th, depending on when they're available. And we always used to run it till, like after Labor Day on those weekends. And then, due to the budget cuts, we have to have enough money for the following May, so we stop it pretty much Labor Day.
May I ask a question?
yes.
So with the enforcement officer, the enforcement, the ticketing officer, or have you had trouble recruiting people, or is it
We
mostly
only had one
just
applicant,
the-
and we hired the one applicant, and she's going back to college on I think it's 20th,
Yeah.
August 20th.
And nobody else lined
I
up?
have someone starting tomorrow to finish out the rest of the season.
Is it hard to get people to do that right now? Is that,
And we even raised the hourly rate this year, and still no applicants.
thank you.
Excuse me, I've heard both that it's a budget question and that you can't find people.
Both.
Is it in fact that you don't have the budget? Would you be able to hire more people if we
Probably
could
not.
convince, because your parking enforcement agent is a revenue generator. And I know that the police department doesn't recognize that revenue, but someone in the budgeting process ought to be able to say, okay, we hire somebody to enforce parking, every time they write a ticket, it's $50, or $50 less, whatever the ticket costs. I just like, as we're going into the budget season, I'd like some recognition that the fact that it's a cost to the police department doesn't mean that it's a cost to the town. Thank you.
Okay.
That's a good point.
A couple of other questions along those lines. Right now, the ticket is $50 parking, but that's a fairly new number.
July 1, yes.
All right, so we don't know in terms of if that's made a difference across.
So
the
as
board.
far as tickets being issued, from 2020, you had 1,300 tickets for the full year. 2023, for half a year, you had 262.
That's because we had additional parking people, plus, Diane and I were talking about it, I think we only had one winter parking ban over the winter. And I think that's a decrease in the tickets as well. This year, for this year.
I have a question.
Yeah, okay.
So, sounds like, just from my education here, sounds like the officers don't write parking tickets during the summer? Is it only the parking?
They write them year round.
They do? Okay, so it's not just the parking officer that we hire, the ticketing person during the season. Officers do ticket for parking as well, okay. I had a specific question around Singing Beach, because I've heard from a number of different sources that by the time the attendants get there from Parks and Rec, the lot may already have cars in it from non-residents, and we don't have someone available to go around and ticket those cars that don't have a resident sticker.
So on the weekends, when we have the officer there, that's the first thing he does.
Okay, so we do that on the weekends.
On the weekends.
Okay.
And during the week, we rely on the staff to call us if the car's gonna be there or not.
When was the last time we towed?
So towing is problematic. We will tow if it's like a busy day and the cars are gonna be there for an extended period of time, but since cross towing has left, the problem we now have is the people coming off the beach, come to our front lobby, and where's my car? Well, it's in Gloucester or it's in Beverly. Well, how do I get there? And you said, well, we take a train or an Uber. I have no money. So then it just creates a whole nother problem
So there are
for
a
us.
lot of elements that we need to, I mean, just because when people say, well, why don't you tow? There's a lot of information that I think we need to make sure people understand before going that route.
I mean, if it's a public, like if it's an absolute public safety
Right.
issue where a car's blocking the road, it doesn't matter who it is, it's going. But we leave it up to the OIC or the shift or the sergeant's discretion to determine, and we talk about this at the beginning of every single summer at our staff meetings. Tow if you have to. If you have to tow, you can tow.
Well, and I think that's an important message to let people know. I mean, when I read somebody saying, well, why don't we tow? There's a lot more that goes into it than just saying, been there too long, pull it out.
So for it may be a discussion for our budgeting process, though, once we get some data to see how effective this increase in the ticket price is, if it hasn't had that much of effect and we do have, additional problems and we're not comfortable with towing, well, maybe during the summer months, we jack up the price of the ticket. I mean, it seems like
Yeah.
we're still
Yeah,
under Gloucester and Essex, from what I saw in the data. They charge more for a ticket than we do.
mhm.
So that might be something to revisit during the budgeting process.
But the other towns, they can purchase a parking. You can go and purchase a parking spot in Gloucester, I believe, whereas they can't really do that when they come here. There's no parking for the non-residents, so therefore they will say, well, $35, well, now $50 for a day at the beach.
That's what I'm saying
Yeah,
that
yeah.
raising the ticket price
Yeah.
may be a way of
'Cause we don't-
helping with that. Because
So
they
that-
do have parking, it's 35, whatever the Boy Scouts charge.
To that point, does the parking officer do they find that the cars that they ticket generally are there for the whole day? They'll come around 2 or 3 hours, same cars there?
Not like it used to be. We used to double ticket.
That's where I'm kind of going with
And
this.
double ticket, it seems to me like the cars are moving. If there's a car there, we do double ticket, but I don't think it's as
Not
often
much.
as it used to be.
Okay, so those cars are there 2 hours, but they're not there 4 or 5 hours. I don't know how frequently some of these.
And again, it goes back to one person. We used to, on a busy Saturday, she may not get off of Beach Street. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And she has to do this lot, has to go to White Beach. And do those rounds. So it's difficult with one person, and when we had two, we used to split the downtime.
understood. You said 1,300 tickets in 2020, and this year something like 260 to date? Okay, so that's down quite a bit, and I'm not sure that,
But it's gone down every year. And
Oh, it
2020
has.
was COVID, yeah, so it went down to 1,100 to 900.
yeah, that's very difficult to evaluate
Now people here, we're going to the beach.
with COVID, but nevertheless, I mean, this is a fair year, so it's pretty much, an open year, but nevertheless, the numbers are down quite a bit. I don't know if
But
that's.
no snow emergencies really.
Yeah,
Oh, that could be
Yeah, I don't think the beach weather's been.
And it hasn't been very good beach weather either, right?
Is there, most of the ticketing is done in the summer? I mean, if you were to split it in terms of percentages
yeah, most of the ticketing's done in the summer.
in 3 months,
Yeah, and then when we have snow emergencies.
and people aren't getting off the street.
You know, and then again, we go back to we're doing too much and we're doing too little. So we gotta find the
Sweet spot.
medium in the middle, and it's the same thing with parking, with traffic enforcement. We're doing too much or we're doing too little. So it's a balancing act.
Okay.
Depends on who you ask.
Yes, I guess. Other questions specifically related to parking overtime, parking tickets per se? I've got a question about voting placards.
Yeah. And tucks, we have to talk about
Yes,
tucks,
well, we've
right?
got to throw
Yeah.
that into the mix
But
there.
we also ought to talk about the Mascanoma Park, resident slots.
Yes,
Which is more related, we can get to tax next.
okay,
The spots in Mascanoma, useful for people who are in the boat, people who are using the boat club. That's a situation where I think perhaps we could find a way to tow, say, get an arrangement with the schools that the cars get towed to the school lot, or even get towed to the MBTA lot, rather than towing to Beverly or Blunt.
With the security.
Yeah, so once we tow a car, we own it. We have to inventory it and own it. And if it's locked, we have to open it and inventory all the content. So it's just not like moving it from one section,
Yeah.
you know, to the next. So it has to go to a tow yard inside a secure lot.
Thank you.
understood.
More layers to the
Complex
onion.
question, or issue, I should say. Okay, yeah, so there's some, I'm not clear about what's 2 hours and what's 3 hours over in Mascanoma. There are some 3-hour slots,
3 hours in the middle.
or in the middle
Yeah,
slots
in
are
the
3?
intersection along where it used to be resident, but we changed it due to COVID.
Mhm.
So anyone can park there for
3
3
hours.
hours.
Okay, and for some going to the beach, that makes sense for them, because that's a
Or going out on a
2-hour
boat.
stay or something. Okay,
May I just,
sure,
I just, John, I wanted to address, Mr. Carlson, that when you tried to address me, it's, everything is supposed to go through the chair, and
No, I understand, I
typically-
understand completely.
Yeah.
typically what
I
happens is that
No,
we
I-
discuss, and then the
fine.
chair will ask questions, and I just wanted to explain that. You definitely will have a chance.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. I just
Okay,
wanted to
thanks
make
for
sure that that was
interjecting.
clarified.
That's fine. Okay, so what's the story with the voting placards, which I guess are now, they were easily copied at one point and now it's harder?
They're the same right now, but
Okay.
people were told not to do what they had done. We will use different paper or some sort of something next year. Some sort of watermark that can't be copied, I'm not quite sure.
Are they colored in some way?
They're
or-
not, no. The
Oh.
colored was just fading. So the colored paper on the dashboard would fade, so trying to get one that wouldn't fade into the other color seemed more tricky, and honestly, I didn't think anyone would think to copy it. I didn't.
If they do they lose their ability to have a placard at all? I mean, completely?
So we didn't get there, but we did state that that would happen.
Yeah.
But we would refuse to issue going further, and the 2 violators have said that they ripped up those extras and won't do that again.
Okay.
So the 1% of the population did. But we'll have better placards next year for that.
In my opinion, we have how many voter placards issued?
Is it 60 that I need?
82.
Yeah, and we only have so many spots. So my thought would be, you know, a resident, like we have some residents that get voter placards too, so they can park here rather than over there in the resident slots. So I don't know what the board thinks, and Diane and I have talked about it, is voter placards for non-resident mooring permit holders only.
I do try to tell people, if you live here, you don't need to
Yeah.
buy a voter placard, you can park right there, but,
Unless you want a front row seat, but
That's what they.
And that's what they want.
yeah, I guess that's,
That should, I mean, should we
Not
have,
So what?
should we have
They're on the
spots
boat.
for non? Yeah, I mean, if people have a mooring, shouldn't they be able to park? You know, have access,
I'm sorry, are you speaking of non-residents or residents?
non-residents,
non-resident.
have somewhere where they can park
And
to,
I think we've been lenient in the 2-hour spots. If this is all filled and Tux Point has got a function and that's filled, of letting them park out here.
We have 2 boatyards in town that have a lot of space during the summer for parking. They also rent dinghy space. The boatyards have been complaining that they don't have, it's a hard business. And by giving non-resident boaters placards to park in private town lots, we're taking business away from the boatyards.
So the boatyards are willing to sell parking spaces.
Manchester Marine, I know, I'm not sure about Crocker's Inn, but I know about Manchester Marine.
That's cool.
It's a yearly fee that they pay to park.
Okay.
All right, so some folks might do that if they've got a frequent, of course, if they've got a dinghy there, I don't know how far all of you have rowed a dinghy,
That's a mooring.
but,
There's also a public launch service.
yes, that's correct. So, is there overnight parking at Tux Point in general?
There's nothing posted, whether it's overnight or not. So if it's got a resident, so I have the midnight shift after the complaints we received in there, tagging cars with non-resident stickers, with no resident sticker, and without a voter placard. So
That's my question. Voting placards, I can understand that if people are gone overnight.
if they're yacht club members, there is a yacht club
Parking, I
parking
know,
area, and they're
that's a
supposed to
separate
park
area.
over there, so they're not,
So with Tux Point, it's not, there's only one sign there, resident parking only, on that wooden sign as you enter Tux Point. And that lot, you talk about signage, that needs to be addressed with specific rules and regulations about parking in there. And it's during the day, as we all know, the Charter House is rented, there's a wedding at the,
Oh, yeah.
at the Rotunda, it's a nightmare to control parking.
But if cars are parked there with placards overnight, I assume you'd probably say, okay, and
That's,
move on. It's the ones that have no
Nothing.
identification. That would be a problem.
I don't know how many tickets we've issued, but there's been a few.
Okay, all right, so those cars would get tickets, because they should not be there. But you would clarify the signage there as being resident,
It's that lot's technically resident only. And when Diane came on board, we decided to put some voter placard parking up there because we don't have enough.
right, okay, so should the sign be modified, a resident and/or voter placard parking, something like that,
So for non-residents who attend events at the Chowder House, what are they supposed to do?
Just park,
when you show up?
and you show up.
So it's, I mean, you
It's
don't
open.
ticket them,
It's
it's
open.
open, okay.
But
But overnight,
not,
not overnight.
Yeah.
No, not overnight, no, okay. So that's what I was getting a little confused, is the ticketing only overnight ticketing?
Yeah, that's basically
Okay,
what we're doing
got it,
now.
okay.
So you'll show up there, I don't know, 7 o'clock in the morning, or at some point in time.
Well, Sergeant Gilson's been up there like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, so,
Tux Point gets parties now and again
Yeah,
in the
people-
parking
there's still-
area,
In the summertime, there's people around.
okay.
and kids go.
So it sounds like some sort of updating on the signage is needed,
That's my opinion.
okay?
What are folks' thoughts on the chief's suggestion that voter placards are really only needed for non-residents?
If you two agree, I don't
I
have a problem.
kind of think that's a good idea.
Yeah. That makes
We're
sense.
trying to become a voter-friendly community.
Well, Well, the problem is that over here, that placard entitles them to parking in the front row. So if they're schlepping a lot of stuff onto their boat, they only have to walk a shorter distance. And so, and that also kind of, I won't say reserves them a spot, but the chance that if it's a busy day, the chance of having a spot there, because only placards are allowed there, might be better than if it's the general parking.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say.
Maybe that doesn't happen so much.
Yeah, I'd say it's full both places.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So, but that is an advantage. That's one reason people who have a dinghy out here, they want a placard. Because they want to
So
park.
so that's a good point, and I'm wondering though, are there other ways to solve that problem? Rather than issuing, because basically that means that person has two parking spaces available, two types of parking spaces available to them in the town hall lot. If it's, the issue is schlepping stuff, I mean, do we put, carts out there so they can wheel them down and,
Just drop it off.
Drop it
I
off.
mean,
Drop it
you
off.
just
Or
drop
drop,
off
leave,
and
go.
then park afterwards, I mean, I,
People who are trailering their boats do the same thing. and they-
Yeah.
So, I would agree that, just my opinion, is that, I'm sorry to be a slight inconvenience to you that you have to move your car after you unload it.
Yeah.
But, if we are issuing non-resident moorings, then we have to allow these non-residents to park there.
No, what is the history of those? Well, it was
I
initially-
really don't understand why, we have to give parking spaces if we, I know why we have to give mooring spaces, that's a state regulation, that's a state law. But I don't know why we have to offer people parking.
Where are they gonna park to get to their boat?
At the boat yards.
That's hard. There's a third of
Yeah,
these moorings
I
are
know.
held by outside people. That's several hundred people. And you're telling them they can't park anywhere in town? I think that would be a challenge. Pretty tough.
Chair, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
today,
Diane.
if I may, maybe, we're not gonna make any changes to the voter placards
No.
for this year.
No.
So if you'd like to kind of table that and think about it, and then, see what kind of feedback you get, I can do whatever you like, as far as the voter placards.
I think it's an interesting idea, maybe, Debbie, maybe we could put it on the action item list, right? And, so that we don't forget about it. But when do you normally go through the process of issuing the placards?
Like all the time, people are still coming in to get voter placards. But I can go through the list and see if I could see resident, non-resident, kind of get an idea of how many are residents versus non-residents. But the majority of them happen as soon as Bion lets people go in the water.
That's what I'm saying, what's the,
So whenever-
April,
Yeah.
March?
That's
March?
the biggest time, and then
So-
they dwindle.
Yes, the only challenge I really see is Baker's Island overnight parking at Tux Point. Because daily, whoever wants to park there, I don't care if you've got a boat or not, if you wanna park there and go out on your boat for a few hours during the day, you have the right to do that. And the same over here. You don't get a front row seat anymore, and I don't know the history of when that was set up, but you could get, I think it's been a long time, I think it was there, I've been here 25 years, I think it was there when I moved here.
Probably, I don't remember.
And, but I don't see that as a major inconvenience. But you really have to figure out how you're gonna manage those few folks who are gonna be away overnight because they have a place out of Baker's Island and they're.
Well, those are the ones who go pay at the boatyard, I think. I mean, that's not for us to figure out.
No,
I
I
don't,
don't know how many folks. those
No, I
are.
just would wanna make sure the people, non-residents who have a mooring, they may be
Have
day
access.
boaters, make sure they have a place to put their car and be happy.
Which is different than the Baker's Island.
Right.
residents.
So, when would we be, Diane, when would you recommend we get back, you're gonna collect some data?
Yeah, I'll collect some data, I can get that to you,
Mhm.
by the beginning of the year, and then, because then we'll update rules and regs and the placard information, and we can update the website that way.
January?
so, John, if I may,
Yes.
just the board action, discuss level of enforcement desired for parking, speeding, and other traffic violations. Vote to affirm that mooring holders with voter placards can continue to park at Tux Point. That's what our action is for these, before we move on to the budget reserve.
Well,
Okay, yeah, she's running a little bit late here.
and this might be an action item, as long as we're parking or when it's appropriate. But I'd like to, sometime before the next annual town meeting, revisit parking down Beach Street. Okay, there's 30 to 35 spots, town property, okay? But, I know that we saw emails about leasing space. That space is there. Former Chief Connolly did a study. There is no safety issues. It generates income tangentially, and I think that it's something that we should revisit and take a good hard look at. With that, I would also at the same time like to eliminate one parking spot at the across from the entrance to Harbor's Point, and put a crosswalk in there. So.
So maybe the action would be
There's
for us to, because we've had feedback from a number of different sources. We've had the Downtown Improvement Committee did their study and combined 2 parking studies. We've
Place
got
finding.
place finding.
Mhm.
It would be nice to have a consolidation, and Greg, I don't know whose job it would be to do this, but a consolidation of all of the feedback we've received.
Diane just said she did.
And just, because there are some good ideas that are coming in through resident emails. I've
Yeah.
just in the past 2 weeks, we've had a number of residents send us emails with some really good ideas. But quite frankly, I don't want to take the time to go back over emails we've been receiving and
Get those collated into some
somebody
sort.
should be able to just say, look, here's the list of good ideas and
That's
what would we
us.
like to do it? And I think, Chief, you had also wanted, possibly were recommending looking at the kiosks.
Parking
right?
meet, yeah.
So I think we need to have another discussion that we may not have time for tonight,
Not
but,
tonight,
but there's a lot of feedback from a lot of different sources, and it would be nice to have it all in one.
And we've talked about aspects of these, as long as I've been on the board, we go back and forth, and you try to work in some aspects, and then you get blowback or pushback on some. So it's always a moving issue. I think, as Todd said, you react to one set, you go the other way, and it's trying to try to spend more time in the middle, which is harder to find.
Okay, so, I'm trying to pull this all together. I mean, the first issue is Diane and the appeals process. And of course, it's all on your shoulders, Diane.
We're all looking at you.
Yes, is there anyone that would like to make comments? Mr. Carlson,
Yeah.
please. Name and address?
John Carlson, 9 Walker Road.
Thank you.
I am, first off, I do believe it was a mischaracterization, Becky, that you made. I brought this forward and I raised the issue, not because of one person filing the ticket, because they ended up paying the ticket. They didn't go to the magistrate. I brought this because this is an unfair, unfriendly implementation of a ban. We all make mistakes, and I do not trust people, and I am willing to stand up for any mistake I make. But when you put an appeal in one person's hands with no guidelines, that person, whoever they are, can be having a bad day, could be having a bad week. And for whatever reason, they don't accept a valid appeal. That's not against one person in particular. That is who we are by human nature. So, and I give you an example. The town library hired a new child's librarian. She got a placard. The first week she was here, she forgot to put the placard in the car. Her appeal was denied and she had to pay the ticket. Now, here's a new town employee here, not even a week. And and even another librarian from the town went to the town hall. Appeal denied. Here's somebody who works with the children of this town, new town employee. Now, I'm not looking for special waivers, but there's a perfect case where an appeal could have been implemented, but wasn't. So what I really would like to see the town do is remove that and implement a policy where if you're a town resident and you get a parking ticket and you, for whatever reason, want to appeal it, you go down. If it's your first, you automatically get a waiver. Second, you pay half the parking ticket. Third, you pay the full parking ticket. That is not an accounting nightmare for this town. We have a complete list of all the registered cars. It's very easy to tap into that database and write a hook, or you can even keep a paper ledger. That is not that hard to ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carlson. Any further thoughts on that? We have a process, and the town clerk is the adjudicator of all that, and the next step after that is really, I guess, the justice system or something?
Magistrate.
Is that correct? Magistrate? I don't know what other towns do. If there are other types of appeals processes, that's the one that we have in place now. So there is a recourse. We can go through the justice system, but now it gets more involved, sure. But we could revisit that if you want at some point in time and feel maybe there should be some intermediate step for that. But I'm inclined to support the town clerk and the decisions that she makes on a regular basis, because it's hard. You see a lot of different circumstances, and yeah, I'll assume every week for you is a good week. But it's hard to pass judgment on all this, figure out what the story is, but.
I tend to agree, John. I do think, however, it's important for us to understand when an abatement is given. What is the rationale used? So I wouldn't make any changes, I guess is what I'm saying. I wouldn't make any changes to our current process without first understanding under what circumstances we are giving out the abatements. Sounds like a new resident who doesn't know what's going on is one scenario, but I don't think we have the data to show what the others might be. So without the data, I would be uncomfortable making any changes tonight.
I'd just like to make a comment too.
Yeah.
I think taking the discretion away from the parking clerk and giving her a set of rules is dangerous.
If I may.
Please.
I also, in typically, employees come under the town administrator. So my question is, what, if any, oversight or input regarding the parking clerk do we have? Greg?
Well, I have not gotten involved with individual appeals, if that's what you mean.
I'm asking if we as the select board have any, again, because employees of the town are under your, under you.
But if you wish to have a different approach and a different policy, then that is for you to decide. How we implement that is something that we as staff are obligated to follow through on.
Is the policy, I assume there's some sort of policy but is written, but it's very brief. It just says you appeal with the parking clerk and that's it. Is that it, pretty much?
It's really governed by state law.
It's state law, so you as the board is right in here in the state law, direct supervisors of the parking.
Okay. So,
My only other comment, we also have to follow law, and we can't treat one group of people differently than another group of people.
Right.
So we can't treat residents differently than we treat non-residents.
correct.
If you want to give, one a mulligan, basically, then you would have to give a mulligan to everybody.
Okay, that's understood, and I Well, I think Diane knows that. Because it's the way that's the way she is working.
I just want to clarify that my statements were in no way, I was not looking to appease residents of Manchester more so than anyone else. Okay, it wasn't, it just, I looked at what seemed to be a common sense approach to that, and I thought that's what was lacking in that particular instance. And it would have happened if it was a resident, non-resident, or whatever. So I'm not looking to cast a better light on residents.
In my opinion, this is where what one person thinks is common sense can be in conflict with what the laws tell us to do. We think it's common sense, but then if you dig further, what guides us in terms of laws and responsibilities might be counter to what we think is common sense.
Okay. So where do we want to go with this level of enforcement as it stands now, so far as parking is concerned? Does it remain
I
Where
don't
it
feel
is.
comfortable making any changes
right now?
without data, and nothing's come before us tonight that would,
Okay, all right.
in my mind, warrant
And we mutually agreed that the voting placards is something that's on the table but needs a little bit more data over the rest of the year. And then maybe we do something about changing that policy a few months down the road. Okay.
And just to follow up, John, I think we also need the action to review the consolidated recommendations on parking. There were some kind of just go do's that came out of some of those other meetings. We had discussion, but we didn't revisit it. I mean, simple things like painting lines on Central Street to denote where the parking spaces are. There were some very simple things that were in some of those presentations that we could do to improve the situation in town, and I feel like we kind of didn't clearly say when we were gonna get back and make some decisions.
And we would do that with Chuck and, or
Right.
with
Well, that's
DPW
DPW was the one that's.
and,
The chief.
And the chief.
yeah.
Okay.
So I just think we
is-
know that
Is that
action.
something we can put on our action item?
I think so.
So put that down there for, I don't know when.
She already got it.
Couple
Already
of
got it.
meetings out. Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else on parking issues at this point? Okay. We've got a few,
John,
Yes.
John, can I
Oh.
just, I'm sorry, can I just interrupt for a minute? I just noticed that, that Kimberly Trainer joined and she was with the Coast Secure. And just to let her know that you have already approved that because you had some extra time. And so she's
Oh.
all set.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for letting me know.
okay,
Yeah.
thanks for attending.
All right, thanks. Bye. Have a good night.
Right,
Just
okay.
don't park your bikes anywhere.
So,
Yes,
Gene Harness, the 48th Street.
Christine.
I was wondering if we have enough employee parking behind Town Hall and up on North Street? Or if it overflows into like the downtown business district?
Mhm.
Is that an issue? Do we need to look at more parking? Or is there enough?
I don't know if the parking study that was done covered employee parking. Did that report?
Again, I think, we had two parking studies, there were some consolidated recommendations, and I think it would be good to refresh our memories on all of that.
That would be a
I
good
know
one.
employee parking was discussed, but I don't
Yeah, I
have
don't-
that committed to memory as to what the recommendations were there. Generally, there was enough parking, I think, but it was how we manage our parking, I think that was the takeaway.
Yes, it
That
was.
generally, there is enough parking, but we can manage it differently to help. move
And
things
some
along.
of the employees just didn't want to park in
Right.
the lot. We did have some of the employees tell us that or employers say that some of their employees
They make it up as
would
they
park
go.
on the street anyway, because they didn't just move a little bit more forward.
So that's a note that we can put down when we revisit the parking in a couple of meetings down the road. That's your question. Okay. Anything else on parking? Since we've got a few folks here, people-oriented things, maybe I could skip ahead. We'll pass over the budget and the harbor management plan for now and go right to the interviews.
John,
Is that okay?
John, I
Yes,
think
Ann.
there's a hand. There's a hand.
Yes. Who is that? Can you identify yourself?
Yeah, hang on a minute. Yes. John?
Oh, Jim, yes.
Yes,
Identify-
Identify yourself.
oh, I'm sorry, Jim Starkey, 13 Tux Point Road.
Thank you.
I would like to point out that the problem at Tux is not voters schlepping stuff. The problem with Tux are people who are parking there for 1 week, 2 weeks, and 3 weeks at a time. Nobody has ever been ticketed out of town cars who are there for 2 weeks. They're parking for Baker's Island, they're using this as long-term parking lot. There's virtually nobody with a voting placard that has used it as a voting placard. Because people with boats don't go out for 5 and 6 and 7 days at a time. So it's a problem of long-term overnight parking, and I would like to see the concentration on that.
Is that,
Voter placard is almost a red herring.
okay, these are not voter placard things. These are cars. Are they cars from town or out of town cars?
They are exclusively out-of-town cars. Almost nobody with a town sticker parks overnight at Tux Point. But just to give you some idea, the most egregious case is a fellow from Ipswich with a black pickup truck who has one of Bayon's mud moorings for an 11-foot inflatable dinghy, and he parked his car with a voter placard for 3 weeks straight at Tux Point. And that's not terribly atypical.
Okay, but he had a voter placard, which is why you would have taken a pass.
Yeah, there's nothing, he is right, there's no rules for overnight parking. There's no rules.
If you have a placard.
There's no rules, period. So if you have a placard, you can park there. There's nothing that says you can't park there.
Right, but if you have no placard, there's no
No,
overnight parking
Yeah,
if
and
you're
that's what I,
just a stray car.
yeah, that's why Sergeant Gilson's in there at night, parking.
Right, I understand. So this is that's right, and I guess he does have a boat there. You said he's got a boat that's in the tidal area, but he's there for 2 and 3 weeks at a time, but there's no way for you to
He's
just,
the caretaker of Baker's Island.
oh, he's the caretaker for Baker's Island. I see. All right. So he's kind of a special situation, so he's gone for
He's
one.
there even in the winter.
Okay. I understand. All right, well, that's a special situation.
But again, there's no rule in regards to overnight parking, period.
So if that's a problem, then we
Similar
need
to
to
what-
come up with,
Mascanoma Park is no overnight parking between 2 and 6 a.m. That was because that was being tied up by people for 2 or 3 weeks.
So maybe we could ask Greg and the chief, to recommend some rules around overnight parking, and we can include that in our discussion.
Yeah, I'm not sure quite how to manage that. That's a long time, but there are people that will go out to Baker's Island for the weekend.
then those should be the ones buying parking, paying for parking at Manchester Marine or Crocker.
But there's nothing to enforce if we don't have a rule, is what I
That's
hear
what
the
I'm,
chief,
yeah,
right? So
yep, so
I
we
think
need
we
to have
need
a
you to
rule.
tell us what the rules could look like, and then we could provide feedback and implement.
Okay, all right.
Action
So-
item.
Yeah, Tux is a special situation. The other places is just no overnight parking, period.
Mascanoma Park, there's no overnight parking.
Period. I don't care what your.
Between 2 and 6 a.m.
Okay. So we need to decide how we're gonna deal with that for Tux, it's a special situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
John?
Who else? No one else? Okay.
Hand up.
Oh, Jim, you still got a hand up? I do not have a computer in
Yes,
front of me.
yes. I would also like to point out that there are people who are parked there for 1 week or 2 weeks straight that do not have voter placards, who are non-residents and are not ticketed.
Well, I don't know, that's an enforcement policy, I guess, and
It is.
Yes.
This year so far, 2 tickets have been given out at Tux Point Park for overnight parking, and both of them involved Xerox copies of the same voter
Okay,
placard that were passed around among
we heard
friends.
that anecdote earlier, that problem, yeah, okay. Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. Chief has heard you. Okay. We're done with parking? And cars in general, okay. Let me skip ahead to the interviews for 2 slots here on various committees. One is Robert Scott. Robert, you're here?
I'm here.
Good. I understand you're interested in serving on the zoning board.
I am.
Tell us a little bit.
Of myself with the zoning
Of
board.
yourself and interest, yes.
Sure. So, I'm a building inspector now. I was a contractor before that. I was a building commissioner for Marblehead for a while. Currently state building inspector. My district is the MBTA. Have interpreted and enforced zoning in the past. City of Everett, town of Marblehead, down in Tewksbury. So I do have some experience at least interpreting, carrying out, and enforcing it, and so on. Enforcement actions and fines and issuance and the appeals process. I've also been to the Building Code Appeals Board, as well as Zoning Board of Appeals meetings and hearings. I don't have to do it at the state level any longer, but so to do it here in my own town, I don't think would be a conflict of interest. So when I found out that Brian might be stepping down, I volunteered to hopefully take his place, and hopefully I can contribute a little bit to the town in that regard.
Great. Thank you very much. Becky, any questions from the board here?
What about your time availability
As far as,
to be able to attend meetings, go on site visits?
I believe it's mostly in the afternoon.
Site visits are now usually Tuesday nights, and we'll change that to Saturday mornings in the winter. So it's usually a couple of site visits once a month, and then 1 meeting.
Okay. And the meetings are virtual, or they're?
No, they're hybrid. This hybrid.
So,
But typically, you do need to attend, so you can't do them all virtually, or it's not advisable?
yeah, I mean, I have time in the afternoon to come down and be in person if the off reason, what the permitting I can't make me come in virtually. Right now, Saturday mornings, I have a copy of the Legion, so with all the other vets.
It's one Saturday.
I could
Alan will let
skip,
you out.
I could skip that and come out and take a look.
That only happens in winter.
So,
Yeah.
my other questions are, in terms of the town's zoning ZBA process and how the town handles that, what do you see that we're doing well? What do you see that we need improvement on?
Well, coming from building enforcement background, I'd like to advocate for our building inspector here. Maybe, I'd like to make sure that he's getting all the support and the resources that he needs as far as enforcing the zoning, making those decisions. I know that, sometimes there's really no easy answer, neighbor wars and things like that. As far as the process is concerned, I don't have an opinion on what necessarily could make that better, but I think that as far as the interpretation and the enforcement and advocation for the building inspector and possibly supporting his decisions or possibly overturning depending on what happens, that's something that is really where I would probably lean to right now.
Thank you, and thank you very much for stepping up.
You're welcome.
Ryan?
No, I've actually dragged his butt down here, so.
Kathy?
I was gonna ask about the conflict of interest, but you already addressed that, so I have no other questions. So great background, and thank you for stepping up.
Ann?
Great background, and thank you for stepping forward. It's not an easy job, and I appreciate your willingness to take it on.
And likewise, I really thank you for raising your hand. You've had some experience so that you know it's one of the tougher committees in town to be on.
Okay.
You're dealing with a lot of,
Again, sometimes there's no easy answer.
no, have you spoken with Sarah,
I'm not.
the chair? Okay, all right. Have you spoken with this guy?
Correct.
Okay, good.
He survived, he survived.
Just to clarify, he's not, he'll be taking on a voting, immediate voting member now. I'm stepping back as an alternate.
Right. This is, and you're filling out a term, I'm not sure.
I believe
June 26th of 2026.
Okay,
Because it was basically James Mitchell's step down.
all right, it's 2026, the one is, what are they, three-year terms? Okay, so that's, yeah, this term just started. Okay, I understand, that's good. Generally, we hear from the volunteers on one evening, and then maybe on a subsequent night we vote. I'm not sure that's necessarily gonna happen this evening.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Robert Scott to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term to expire on June 30th, 2022.
2026.
2026.
2026.
2022. Wow.
I second that.
Okay.
2026.
You've already checked out, haven't you?
Is there a hand up?
Pardon me?
I think Sarah Pierce has her hand up. I don't know whether it's appropriate.
Hi, yes, Anne, thank you so much. Sarah Pierce, 9 Front Street. So I'm just wondering, what are the actual, I guess, qualifications for being on the Zoning Board of Appeals, especially we're in the middle of an MBTA situation? I'm not sure if you could give me just a brief description.
So I'd just like to clarify that I do not myself actually work for the MBTA. I work with the state, and with OPSI, the Office of Public Safety and Inspection. My jurisdiction is the MBTA. I am the authority having jurisdiction over the projects that take place at the MBTA, construction work within the stations, head houses, office space, maintenance facilities. But I do not in fact work on any of the train cars or associated with, under the umbrella of the MBTA. Also, I have a construction supervisor license. I was a contractor for 14 years, and I'm a certified building official.
To Sarah's question, qualifications, as it relates to, right now, I don't think that the current 40A, there's no real overlap at this point between the 40A and the Zoning Board of Appeals.
It's a planning board issue.
It's a planning board issue and the task force issue. And the I think Rob's understanding of zoning issues, again, the difference between a special permit and variance. Okay.
Or by right.
Oh, by right, I mean, why something, we just had last meeting, why are you filing for a special permit when it should be a variance? And those understanding, and they're finding differences, and Becky, you're on the planning board for it too, so, you know, and I think that, so that's, that understanding, I think, is the fundamental, question on that.
If I may,
Yes, and
there is a number of people in town think that the Zoning Board of Appeals is the place where zoning comes from. The Zoning Board of Appeals is where zoning goes to.
Mhm.
The planning board sets up zoning
Right.
rules. So,
Right.
the Zoning Board of Appeals needs to be able to understand and judge the zoning rules. But in terms of the MBTA project, that's a planning board and select board issue.
Okay, so I guess just in follow-up, I would ask, I 100% support anyone who would want to serve on the zoning board. But I wonder what the communication is between the planning board and the zoning board, and I wasn't specifically
That
referring
doesn't-
to anything in the MBTA, but I just wanted to know what the qualifications were for a zoning board member.
You know, specific qualifications in terms of training, it's largely a familiarity with the issues associated with zoning and having the time to serve. There isn't any other specific type of qualification. There is a zoning board member who serves on the task force and provides some input.
Yes.
But of course, it's mostly, well, there are two planning board folks that are on that, and it's driven by the planning board. So, you know, to your point about qualifications, we certainly do look for people who have spent time in land planning and land management, and certainly Mr. Scott has that background. So it's he's got the type of experience that we think can contribute to the zoning board.
Okay, well, if you guys think he's fit for the job, then he must be fit for the job, so thumbs up.
Good. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank
So-
you.
So we have
John, yeah, John,
a,
also Sarah Melish, hands up.
oh, Sarah's there, okay.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that the planning board is responsible for creating the bylaws, including the MBTA zoning. The zoning board of appeals is responsible for approving exceptions to the bylaws that were passed by the planning board. And a member of the zoning board of appeals needs to read the zoning bylaws and understand them so we can determine whether we can issue a special permit or a variance to make a waiver of the existing bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That is your new potential boss, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Okay, a motion on the floor.
I seconded already.
Seconded, okay. Ready to vote?
Yep.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Becky?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
And John says yes. Great,
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much,
Robert.
Rob.
Thank you.
okay, good. And next, Mary, I see you here.
I parked in a 30-minute space, and I didn't think I was getting a ticket. Hopefully I won't. I'm Mary Pert. I think my copy of my resume was in your packets. I don't know if anybody has any particular questions. My reason for volunteering is that I've lived here much of my life and always said I would never ever put my hand up for anything. But eventually I looked at the fact that I'm not working right now, that I have a wealth of information and experience in elder services. And you're missing half of your council on aging board.
Yep.
So I thought maybe I ought to put my hand up. So that was my rationale for
At least
volunteering.
two.
Yeah.
So, do you have any particular questions?
You've already answered, and your information, boy, we'd be fortunate to have you.
Okay, well, thank you. You know, I know there's already an established board and dynamics and all, and I need to, you're the new person, you work your way into the group.
No, excellent background, I have no questions.
Okay, that's great. Brian?
I'm good.
And how about Ann?
Just fine. Delighted.
I'm delighted too, Mary. You've been in town 50 years. What took you so long?
I had other family members who served.
Yeah, well, you did, that's right. Okay, that's wonderful. I think you've got a great background for that group, so
Thank you all
that's
very
good.
much.
I'd entertain a motion for Mary.
Sure, I move that the select board appoint Mary Pert to the Council on Aging for a term to expire on June 30th, 2026.
Second.
Okay. Good discussion, ready to vote? Yes.
Becky Jake says absolutely yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
And John says yes. So Mary, that's great.
Thank you very much.
The Council on Aging will certainly welcome you with open arms. It's great.
Two wonderful new volunteers,
Yes.
thank you.
Wonderful. Let's see, we'll go, we've got a beach bum here.
One bum.
So we'll go to that right now before we circle back. Okay, so just, which bum are you?
I'm Stephen Martin.
Okay, good. How are things going? Give us
Pretty
an
well.
update.
It's well, yesterday was busy. Things were going pretty well. Just we didn't work today because of the weather. It was dead at the beach, but for the most part things are going very well, and everyone seems to be enjoying the shuttle service. So happy for that.
Has anything surprised you?
Yeah.
Not really. Kind of going the way I expected it to go. When people get on, they really like the idea. Like everyone's mostly from Boston or somewhere, so they should give us like positive feedback. Everyone's saying it's a great idea, so I'm very thankful that everyone's being very supportive of it.
I noticed that your point of origin has moved around a little bit. Is that kind of market driven?
Yeah, so originally we were thinking go right next to the train station because the train was supposed to be like our main source of traffic. But eventually everything starts to funnel down like right across from Captain Dusty's, that little strip. So we think that picking people up there would be just most efficient for everyone because they have to walk past that point anyways to get to the beach, so.
Mhm. Okay, so that's working out better for you?
Much better, yeah.
Do you get requests from people to go other places? They treat you like a cab?
Pretty much. We don't really go anywhere like past Pine Street. The only place I've really gone is Pine Street, that far. So, but people have requested to take us to their houses on Bush Street.
No.
So,
Really?
yeah.
Hope you get a really nice tip
Wow.
for that, holy
Yeah.
cow.
Okay, I'm just wondering if any of that is driven by, I'm parked a long way away or something.
Yeah, it could be. Or people just don't really like to walk. We really only take people to houses when it's not so busy because we got nothing else to do. So on a day like today, if we were sitting up at the circle, someone asked if I could bring them to their house, I would have said yeah, because it was a cloudy day. But on the Sunday, like yesterday, I probably would have said no, just because.
How about, do you have any pushback regarding seatbelts?
No, before everyone gets on, I'd say buckle up, safety first. Everyone kind of laughs at that because nobody's really heard like a 17-year-old say buckle up. So people enjoy that, but yeah, everyone seems to be buckling up, so it's good.
And are people, I hope they're appreciative of the service that you all are providing with remuneration.
We had a elderly man yesterday who had some trouble getting on the cart, so we have a step stool just in case anyone, because the cart's lifted, so it's kind of hard to get up there. But he would have never made that walk because it's just like, it's such a long walk. So he was very thankful that we were there to provide him with that service.
Have you had anybody say anything not positive?
I'm sure there are some haters, but I've had nothing like, I've heard nothing said or nothing. Nobody said anything to my face, so.
Excellent. Good.
Okay, so it's going along, and you started when, about mid-July?
Yeah, we're 3 weeks and 3 days in today, so I think July like 10th or 12th maybe.
Yeah.
Next year we're planning on starting at Memorial Day.
Yeah.
To that point, they'll have to come back before the town?
Say it again?
Will they have to come back before the town? So give us plenty of time.
Yeah, give us some time, but I think that you have to, say this is, we plan to do it for this season, and we'll do that at that time. Well, that's good. I haven't heard anything.
Nor have I. I've just
Seen you
heard
guys
good things.
operate back and forth a few times, so.
My question is, how are they getting along with, I thought the 15-minute spot was for Captain Dusty customers. And how are you getting along with Captain Dusty's if you're taking their parking space?
I can speak to that, if you don't mind, okay? That 15-minute parking spot is actually a problem for Captain Dusty's. because of the cone at the crosswalk. As cars pull out of the driveway, if there's a car parked there, it makes it more difficult for people to pull it out, okay? So she has zero issue with someone there and not having a car, just causes problems. for her
Has she
customers.
brought you any ice cream to say thank you?
Yeah, if anything, you're depositing customers there
Mhm.
and then walk across the street.
Yeah, I get calls from people because the sign that we have is at Bravo. So I
Yeah.
just, when they call me, I say go across to Captain Dusty's, get an ice cream, we'll be there in like 5 minutes.
Nice.
All right, it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. Good. Other questions or comments? Good.
Congratulations.
Good.
Thank you.
And I don't know how long your season goes, because I know you have football practice coming up, and that's gonna be a problem for you.
Yeah, football's probably gonna be late at night, so it shouldn't cause too much conflict, but if we have football like in the mornings, we'll just work before football and then work after football, so.
Okay.
Nice job.
Right, nice
Great.
job. Thank you for starting the service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Yep.
Excellent and
Good.
safe.
Good night.
Since no one's taking out the boat, maybe I'll just do anything for them.
All right,
Since people come up with boats.
let's circle back to the budget reserve discussion.
Could I, John,
Yes.
just a point of clarification? I understand that the chief has already left and we're way over time discussing other enforcement approaches, but I would like us to put on our next agenda to talk about the speeding issues.
Yeah, we didn't get in,
We didn't get into
traffic.
that, and with schools starting, I'm really nervous about Pleasant and School Street. There's been a lot of extra activity there, and I would really like to make sure that's on our next agenda.
And Pine.
And Pine, but really, school and Pleasant is,
Okay. Thank you, Diane.
Yep.
thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. That's correct, we did not discuss that element at all. Okay, the budget, I guess, Greg, could you tell us, get us started on that a little bit? I guess it's kind of like an update.
Correct, John. So, the Finance Committee is in the process of reviewing the target reserve and what that target should be, how do you calculate it? In the past, it has been based on total expenditures, including the school budget, not so much capital, as that has varied, but total operating expenses. And so there's some discussions underway with, amongst the Finance Committee members about whether or not to exclude the school operating budget due to the fact that the school does have their own reserve. And so there's some feeling that are we sort of double counting a reserve there or not. And then the question of the percentage, ranges typically from 5 to 15% would be sort of typical range. We have targeted 10%. We have been over that target for the last number of years. I've been very slowly bringing that down. We will be in that 10%, right around 10% this current year in terms of reserves. Excluding the stabilization. So there's, again, do you count stabilization in addition to reserve or not? We have basically two accounts. One is stabilization account, which has a higher bar to use. It takes a 2/3 vote to remove money from the stabilization, whereas our general fund balance, or what the state calls free cash, is a simple majority vote. And so a lot of communities do distinguish between those two types of reserve accounts. But it's all reserve money in that sense. So there's some thinking that we don't need to keep them separate in terms of that calculation and the percent that we are sitting on. I think, so the Finance Committee is in the middle of that review. They received some additional information that they haven't had a chance to talk about yet from both our auditors and from the state in terms of recommendations, and so they'll be having that conversation in upcoming meetings, and we'll be able to circle back with you as well. So I'm not looking for any final decisions tonight on your part, just sort of an update of where that discussion lies.
Okay.
Yeah, go
Question?
ahead.
More? Or questions from the board at this point?
I have a
Please, Becky.
comment. The information that was forwarded on best practices, I've not seen that before, and it was so helpful. And is this something that is routinely, or should this be included in information for Select Board and FinCom annually? Anybody who comes on new?
Yeah, we certainly can. The state is trying to provide more of that. DOR, Department of Revenue, they've updated their website with a number of best practices and pamphlets and booklets. This came from the GFOA, which is the National Association for Auditors and Accounting. So yes, we certainly can assemble these materials and make sure that everyone has copies.
I don't know if anybody else found it as informative as I.
It was interesting, I'll say that. I guess I would like to hear the Finance Committee's input on that. So the thing with professional organizations is when they are industry specific, they can be very narrow in their thinking. And so we have a very a wonderful FinCom with a very diverse background. And I would wonder if they would agree on that document as being a best practices document. Because sometimes the government leads in best practices and sometimes the government does not lead in best practices, so.
Yeah, good point. And Ann being on FinCom, I think would have having once been on it, a good perspective of that. But for me personally, for clarifying different aspects, whether they were saying you should or shouldn't, but just having a broader understanding was helpful.
I'm not sure, I know we're kind of running late tonight, I'm not sure there's much for us to discuss tonight because I think the big elephant in the room is really the facilities master plan and that capital planning process. And, I think I'm not ready to have too much discussion on reserves until we see that, and I know it's coming soon, I think we're discussing it at our next meeting, and that might be a good time to talk about both and, in concert with the FinCom, but I know we got Sarah and we got Dean here, so you may have a different opinion.
Well, I can add that, we're looking at the money that is in escrow for different projects. And just what we truly need for reserves, for emergencies, like a hurricane hit or something like that, versus whether we're just bankrolling money as like a savings account that's low yield. So those are the things that we're trying to do. And we have a meeting on Wednesday.
And I'm the new liaison, so I'll be dialing in, so.
And from the notes, I know that whatever happens with the school budget feeds into that as well. So we'll see. Greg, where did fiscal 23 end up with regard to the reserves? Or is that a number that we know yet?
But we don't have a final tally. We should have that by the end of the month.
Okay, all right. Okay, another few weeks. All right, good. Any other questions or comments with regard to the update on that? So we'll
I got.
stay tuned. Yes, Ann. Sorry.
When you say we need to have reserves to deal with something like a hurricane, the reserves can only be spent by town meeting. So it's not a savings account in the sense that, okay, the car breaks down, we go into our savings account to pay for the car repairs. the money has to come through a town meeting. The other aspect is, I've seen it used less for, emergency situations and more for dealing with, well, the market crash in 2008, when suddenly our automobile excise reserves, our automobile excise income sank, and more recently with COVID, where we were able to use reserves to keep from raising taxes when businesses and homeowners were suffering from the pandemic. So I would like to hear from Sarah why the committee thinks that we have too many reserves.
Sarah there?
Yeah, she's got a hand up.
Okay, Sarah?
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. I think that the position of the Finance Committee, as was supported by the town meeting last year, was that we feel we should not be stockpiling money in reserves, that we should be charging taxes to people as expenses arise. And that the reason for reserves is for an unexpected occurrence, where we might need to have a meeting in November, December, or January, or let's say January, where we can't increase the tax base in order to use the reserves to cover some unexpected event. And that we feel it's important to have the taxpayers opine on the projects that we want to bring forward and increase the tax base, the taxes accordingly covered. Thank you.
All right, well,
As you know, the taxpayers have to approve spending from free cash.
Yes, but there's a difference between spending from free cash off cycle than it is from impacting the tax rate. So if we can, in November town meeting, we can have appropriations that impact the tax rate until it still absorb it into the tax rate set in December. Once we get beyond that, we need the taxpayer to appropriate it. We cannot increase the tax rate to cover it, so we need the free cash to cover those types of incidents. And that's what we see free cash is for. So we have a major winter storm and we have a major seawall repair, and we may need free cash to cover it, because we can't increase the tax rate. Thank you.
so each year, can I assume that each year there's probably some monies that are taken from the reserves for various capital initiatives? Like
We
pipes and
have
things
been
like-
doing that in the past
Right.
because we had excess
That's a lot of money.
reserves. But we have spent down the excess reserves to the great extent. So in the future, we're gonna need to increase the tax rate to cover capital expenses.
Okay, but that's been spent down, funneled through various one-time capital types of investments.
Right.
Of one
I
kind.
mean, we had reserves of in excess of 16%.
I recall, and that's
Yeah.
fairly recently.
Yeah, and and with COVID and everything, we've spent those down but only for capital projects. But
Okay.
we have a certain level of capital projects we need to fund. If we don't have excess reserves, it will impact the tax rate.
Okay.
And we
Well-
trust taxpayers will accept that. We shall see.
Other questions or comments? Finally got to you. Huh?
Yes.
The chief reason the reserves were building is we were conservative on estimating local receipts. They always came in a lot higher than we anticipated, so that kind of just started accumulating like a rain barrel. So that's why we've been drawing it down to account for that.
Okay.
Right,
And we
just-
have gotten less conservative with our estimates now.
Right, just a little caution there, because that is how we have been funding capital. So if you're not gonna have those excess receipts, then you are going to have to rely more on taxation.
Which is what we're.
So,
Which
so
is, as Kathy said, is a
there's
topic.
always a
that-
trade-off.
Yeah.
Right,
All right.
this is not a
Alright, so we'll-
decision that,
We'll stay tuned. There'll be more to be written on this
Yeah.
certainly in the coming weeks and months. Okay, where are we at here? Harbor Management Plan. And I read with interest your comments here, Greg.
So I had requested that Greg add this to the agenda because we had set up this task force, or it wasn't a committee, it was like a project team or a
Yeah.
task force, and haven't heard a peep since then, and I'd like an update.
So yeah, it's gotten off to a little bit of a stumbled start. They set up their first meeting and the members had not been sworn in yet. So you can't hold a meeting until people get formally sworn in. And so now there's a question, I think, on the chair. There may be a need for a change. So I know that Brian is wanting to work with the crew, with the group. And really, it makes sense to move forward with getting the folks at UMass Boston. There's a department there that helps communities with management plans like this. And that would be a logical next step as well. I think the committee was interested in vetting that choice. So that has, again, slowed things down a bit. So this is one of these examples of whether or not it needs to be a formal committee versus an advisory group to a department head who could be doing the bulk of the work. But you did formally vote in this group, so unless you were to rescind that, it needs to go forward with the normal procedures of posting agendas and having minutes, etc.
So the question in front of us is, do we keep the committee structured the way we initiated it, or do we kind of decommission it in its current form and just let Bion call upon these people to advise him?
is Bion on?
That's what I was gonna ask.
So I'd like,
Yes, I am on.
Hi, Bion.
Hi there. I'm in a car, so I apologize for the background noise.
So I think the question,
Yeah.
I think I'd like to hear from you, Bion, I think others may as well. Would it be more helpful to you to have just a more informal group advising you as you work with the consultants? Or do you still want to have this project task force arrangement that reports to the board to the select board?
Well, my original thought was that a working group, similar to just an advisory group that could be called upon by the contractor to attend meetings, to answer questions for them, provide guidance on specific areas of expertise that they bring. And I would just serve to be a liaison, moderated meetings. But if the board wants a formal committee, then I'll tell them that they need to get sworn in and appoint a new chair. I think that the contractor through UMass, this is their wheelhouse. They are the gold standard for the state for putting together harbor management plans, and they're gonna provide most of the guidance. We'll be there to answer specific questions to make sure that the document that all the folks in town need when these harbor projects come up have every inch of information that can be provided. So whichever form the group takes, that's how we move forward. I'll be, if it's going to be an informal group, I guess my role would be a little larger. If my role is my role would be less if it's a formal committee.
All right, so it sounds like you'd work with it either way, is that correct? Either as an advisory group or as a formal committee?
Yeah, that's right. So as a department head town employee, I will.
We're having a tough time, the reception's a little tough, Brian.
Work whichever way the board wants.
We can't hear you, Brian.
My original group, all the same people. We're heading north to New Hampshire.
Okay, you're okay now, but.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna work with, whichever way the board decides, I will absolutely support and move ahead to the same conclusion.
All right, I think we've got the gist of that.
Either way, my original intention was, yeah.
Okay, all right, good. All right, so the current group has not gotten underway, and I guess they've got, I'm not sure who the chairperson was.
Might be moving out of town.
Greg?
Yeah.
Greg, have you done any due diligence on this and know why things have been a little slow here?
So again, we have the chair who I think is moving out of town, and.
All right, so nothing's happened because he's very.
Who is it?
Steve.
And then, you know, just the failure to get sworn in, just not a clear understanding of that process.
Yes.
of Membership. So that just, those, you know, nothing major in and of themselves, but, you know, you add these issues up and then it is leading to the delayed start.
Okay. In the absence, if it becomes an advisory group, then Bion becomes kind of the de facto head of this?
Right, so it becomes more his project, and then
Right.
he uses the group as an informal advisory group, yes.
So,
Okay. Questions?
We already have a group that advises the select board, and that's the Harbor Advisory Committee, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think when we started with the thought of having this additional group advise us, we were thinking of a much larger harbor master plan. But it's the
Management plan.
No, we started talking about a harbor master plan, but then the scope was narrowed to a harbor management plan, okay? Because we went back and forth, we talked about what should we be doing? But in the early presentations talked about, we need a harbor master plan, but we quickly whittled that down to a harbor management plan.
See, I thought it was semantics on
Well,
terminology.
I think we.
Can I stick an oar in?
What's that, is that Bion?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a harbor master plan. I don't think the word master is appropriate, and I recommended very early on
Semantics.
that the terminology be management plan and not master.
Yeah.
I agree.
No difference in scope at all.
That's what I
Just
thought too.
a
Okay,
different
so-
word.
so my
That was
mistake.
my intention.
So my
Okay.
mistake. So what I would, when we identified that this was a harbor management plan and working group, to me, that scope implies, it kind of all falls under Bion anyway. I guess what I'm saying is I'm very comfortable with having a group of people advise Bion and come to us. Working with the consultant, working as a project team, and when they have something to come to us, you know, where we have to make a decision, we do that. If they are gonna continue as a group reporting to the select board, you know, someone's gotta make sure they get on the train, because the open meeting laws are important, right? So they're not meeting, they're not publishing minutes, they're not swearing, you know. So there's a additional bureaucracy with these committees, and if we don't need to do that and achieve the objective, I'm okay with Bion and the consultants.
I agree 100%.
Just working together.
As long as the scope is covering what needs to be covered and not just limited to what the harbor master's purview is. I mean, I think.
Understand, yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
That was my one
Okay, yeah,
concern.
yeah.
Just to clarify, we're trying to determine what that harbor is going to look like in 10 years.
Not just the harbor, no, it's.
The harbor and the surrounding area, what the waterfront looks like.
Not what it's more about how it's used. It's not that we're trying to say, this is how we envision it down the road.
Not a master plan.
How is it used? Is it used appropriately? Where does funding need to go? It's, I mean, parking, many facets, not just look at the harbor, how many moorings. It's much broader.
No, and I agree, I think that becomes an economic engine of the whole.
Yeah, and it interfaces very much with the town master plan, because that touches on a lot of it.
I don't know about anybody else, I can't hear you.
Yeah, it's hard, Bion, you're in and out, mostly out.
And very.
I apologize, I'm in the middle of New Hampshire, I really apologize.
Okay, all right. But you're aware of the challenge here, and you say you're willing to take, to spearhead this initiative with this consulting group from UMass Boston and get this to move along with input from the various folks that have been, well, they've already been selected in this, but working as an advisory group.
It cannot be done without the input of all these
Right.
folks that have their knowledge. So yeah, I wouldn't consider this project at all without these folks who've volunteered to help.
Right.
Okay,
So I think I'm sorry.
go ahead, Ann.
My question, I think the initial charge to that group was to determine which consultant to use. If we're going to choose the consultant and then use the advisors to work with the consultant, that's a different process, and I want to make sure that that's the process that the board is comfortable with.
My recollection is we were always going to the UMass Boston group, but we didn't know the final tally of all of the folks that might be on the advisory committee or whatever this committee is, because they may have some opinions about the types of people they would want and the input where it would come from. So we didn't know if there were going to be additional people on that committee or not. But I don't know that there was another group other than UMass Boston that was being considered for this, because they, as Bion said, they seem to be the go-to people. Does anybody recollect difference? I don't.
Right, so there were, sorry.
Go ahead, Bion.
So there are other companies we can reach out to. We probably have to enter a bid process.
Okay.
Not only is Urban Harbors the gold standard, but since they're state group, then we don't have to go out to bid for them.
If what?
We do not have to go out to bid if we hire Urban Harbors to do the work.
Which is the UMass Boston group? Okay.
As another governmental entity.
Yes.
The bid laws do not apply.
I see, okay.
I do recall that we were wanting the advisory group to look into different companies.
Different
But
companies?
I think that my feeling is, I agree with Kathy, I trust Bion. I mean, he knows our harbor, he knows sort of in terms of the myriad aspects. I think he's got the understanding, and I would be inclined to go with whomever he recommends.
I don't disagree.
Say,
I don't disagree, I think that, there's someone better, Bion would know it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
It truly is Urban Harbors. It really is.
So I move to, what's the right phrase, Greg? Reclassify or?
Formulate,
Change the steering group to a less formal advisory group.
Oh, yeah, you're rescinding your previous vote to create a formal committee.
Okay, so
And-
I
and
move
its
to,
place.
okay,
Go ahead.
so I move to rescind the select board's prior vote to create a harbor management working group reporting to us, and in its place, allow the harbor master to create an advisory group to advise him for the harbor management plan.
Second.
Before you guys vote, can the town weigh in?
I think this is really something that's the purview of the select board.
Well, there are a lot of people in town who have a lot of vested interest in the harbor and urban groups having a weigh-in.
I understand.
Okay, I just would like to make one small
Okay.
comment.
Okay,
So Bion is basically proposing an urban group to oversee our harbor.
No,
And I would
no, no.
Actually, no.
No.
That's
That's
not
not at
true.
all what he's doing.
Okay, well, could you
That's-
explain
that's
that? Could
So-
you explain that then?
So,
Is it just the name?
Harbor, yes, it's the name of the organization at UMass,
Okay,
Urban Harbor.
my mistake. I'm so sorry then.
So-
I just
No,
want
it's
to
all
make
right.
sure that our town, it's a small coastal town and has been for so long, is represented as that. And I just worry that we're moving in a direction that's not representative of that. So I truly apologize for that. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
okay.
Thank
That's
you.
a legitimate concern.
Thank you so much.
That's correct. You want to,
I just want to clarify
Your motion?
that I made that motion, but it in no way changes the fact that there will be many opportunities for public comment on what is
Correct.
happening here.
Right.
We're just trying to suggest that we don't need the bureaucracy associated with a formal committee, that's all. It in no way says we're not gonna take quite a bit of public input. I just wanna make that clear.
And I would like to make sure that Debbie, who's taking the minutes, have you been aware when Sarah Pierce is speaking? Do you have her address?
No, I don't have her address.
Sarah, would you?
Sarah. yeah,
Sorry.
your address, please, Sarah?
You don't know now, bye guys? It's 9 Friend Street. Becky, I'm pretty sure you're aware, but thank you. It's 9
I
Friend
don't
Street.
know your
They're
personal
here.
address. I
Oh,
been here
thank you,
before,
Becky,
but
for
I-
recognizing that. I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you. It's 9 Friend Street, Manchester, Mass. 01944.
Thank you. I just don't think it was identified at this meeting tonight, but it has been in previous meetings. We
Right.
acknowledge that. So, okay, so what's
So I made.
what you said?
Yeah, my prior motion, I believe, was seconded by Becky, which was to rescind our establishment of the formal committee and replace it with an
An
advisory committee.
advisory
to buy-
committee?
Yeah,
Okay.
to buy on.
Any other
My,
comments?
my question is, will that advisory committee advertise its meetings so that the community can, at least hear what they're saying?
Absolutely will do that. Absolutely. And any member of the public would be more than welcome to participate.
Okay.
I would like to clarify, though, that because of the way that this, I'm not sure that advisory is the right term, but that the group that would be assisting Bion is not a formal committee, so they are not subject to the posting within certain amount of times and the open meeting laws.
Nor are there minutes.
Nor are there minutes.
Okay, so if you're not there, okay.
So
All
this-
right.
So just a suggestion, Bion, to alleviate any concerns, you do a wonderful job of publishing articles in the Cricket, the Waterline.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful opportunity to keep the public informed about whatever meetings you're gonna have, without the formality of the posting and all of that.
That's a good
With
suggestion.
pleasure, and I'll make sure those get into the
Yeah.
Cricket.
Yeah, thank you.
Source of more content.
Right.
So, okay. Any further comment or questions from the board on this, on the motion that's on the table? Ready to vote? Becky?
Yes.
Ann?
No.
Brian?
Yes.
Becky? Excuse me, Kathy?
Yes.
And John says yes. Okay. All right, so that carries 4-1. All right. So Bion,
Thanks, everyone.
keep us informed, because I guess we have to get this
I will.
underway. Yep,
I absolutely will.
thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bion.
Thank you, Bion.
Have a good night.
Yep.
Thank you, Bion.
My pleasure.
The governance project. Who's on there? Is Susan on there or Greg?
Yeah, so, yeah, I can give a quick update again, we don't need to spend a lot of time on
Okay,
this
that's
this evening, given the hour. You have the summary of sort of the main takeaways from the, I'll call the summit meeting that was held with different committee board chairs, mostly board chairs, some regular committee members and department leaders. A good session, a lot of enthusiasm for having such meetings and for sharing information. And, you know, not surprising, the biggest takeaway is, you know, the need for strong and frequent communications amongst and between boards. And so a number of steps geared towards achieving that. Certainly a major item on tap is gearing up for a refresh of the town website and making sure that materials on there are up to date and removing out of date materials. So it's a major undertaking that'll be coming up. And desire to hold these summit meetings on a regular basis, a couple times a year, so that people can have an opportunity to share with each other what they're working on. And again, as we advance the governance project, that really is a primary goal of making sure that the various boards and committees are sort of rowing in the same direction, that we know what the goals are and that the different aspects of a particular goal or priority is being worked on by various boards and committee in unison. And so beefing up those communication lines and making sure that information is being shared is the primary goal. What you just went through was an example of one of the topics that came up about whether or not every committee and task force needs to be a formally appointed group. Are there ways to work with department heads in a less informal way to advance work and then bring it before standing committees? And so, again, an example of that was just something you just concluded. So, in addition, we continue to work on ways for you as a board to make sure you're engaging with residents. The table that you had at the Festival by the Sea was a good example of that. A lot of good conversations were taking place during Saturday. It was busy day, a beautiful day. A lot of people are out and about. So I think that went well. Specifically, we should talk about whether or not you want to return to office hours on a regular basis or not. For you to have the chance for people to stop in and have, ask you questions or just chat about concerns or ideas people have. And then also, particularly with MBTA zoning and efforts, future efforts on responses to the challenges of climate change, the need to engage the public and make sure we're hearing their thoughts and ideas on those two very critical topics coming up. In addition to budget and capital, that's a third item that is certainly going to be a major topic that we'll need to be addressing in the coming months. So that's a quick update in the sense of where we're headed with all this.
Question, I have a comment with regard to the office hours. I think we should probably put that together on a once-a-month basis. When are we doing, like Thursdays, I think? Third Thursday?
Yeah, talk about Thursday, early evening.
When the town hall is open.
Yeah.
In the evening, go through that time period. And I think that's probably a good time, and I think we should probably reinstitute that starting September, and just run it every month. So.
We had been sort of doing that
I think we did it twice.
Thursday that we set aside if we had a meeting, and if we didn't, we did that.
Yes. I think we ought to put
Yeah.
that in as, I think it was the third Thursday of each month from 5 to 6:30, or however late when do the office hours go here, 6:30?
Yeah, till 6:30, yes.
Okay. And we can decide kind of on the spot which two of us is going to be involved.
Are there any upcoming events too that we might wanna also agree to support, like the is it the carnival or what's the thing in October?
This is in the fall?
In October, what the boosters are doing, Carnival.
Carnival's in October.
I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
Is that Parks and Rec, or is that?
Well, it's actually probably the
It's
boosters.
Booster Club.
It's Ty Pinstein and we counting up through the boosters.
Which
And it's
boosters?
The
School.
Manchester Athletic Boosters.
Oh, okay, all right.
And the Parks and Rec is spearheading this.
I mean, maybe that's not the right, I'm just throwing it out there, that may not be the right one, but.
There's a Jazz Fest on Saturday night. Just take it up there, which you remember.
This Saturday?
At the Legion, right?
Legion Day.
Yeah.
I was there last year, and a lot of people talked to me, when I was there last year, until I was,
I'm glad to hear you weren't lonely.
I walked away before I started saying anything bad.
All right. Well, I think it's a good idea that fall festival, I'm aware that something's in the works, I don't know what. But does that lend itself to this? In other words, are there various?
Well, I think it's a 3-day event too.
Oh, it is?
Oh, it's carnival, it's actually rides, there's a Ferris
Okay,
wheel,
so
there's
maybe we'll-
everything, this is going back.
Might be a place to get the parents, but I don't know that would be a.
There'll be a lot of kids running around.
Well, maybe a
That
lot of kids
will
running
be-
around, it may not be the right place.
We need to get a little more information on that.
Yeah.
Are you plugged into that? Okay. Let us know if it makes sense for.
I just don't know.
Yeah.
Well, if there's parents there watching little kids, they're watching little kids.
Right.
Okay, and then anyone above 14 is not being accompanied by a kid, by a parent.
Right.
Well, that might not be
understood.
the right, but I'm just putting it out there
No,
that
that's fine.
if there's other events,
Yeah.
and
But
maybe Debbie or Greg
To
could
that point,
suggest something.
actually,
Yeah.
I will, to that point, I will ask the organizers, because they're trying to broaden the appeal.
Oh.
They'll be, they're reaching out to artists.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
Might be
they're
something.
expecting they would have a few tents scattered.
Yeah, no,
around
there's,
various things.
food tastings.
Okay,
And what I can do is, they're gonna be before the Parks and Rec on Wednesday night.
Okay.
And I will be there and I will ask them and then pull her aside and ask her
Good.
if she thinks that that's something that we can utilize.
all right.
Okay.
That's, good, all right. Other things under, that update, and thank you for the update there on that, Greg.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay, that's good. The next thing is, the American Legion alcohol license amendment, okay. So we all learned that Alan Kirk is a British citizen. And that's the only, I think that's the only update for
If you ever
that
spoke to him, you would know.
application.
Oh, no, we don't know.
Sarah has
It was
her
nice
hand
one.
up.
Yes, Ann?
Sarah Melish.
Oh, Sarah?
Yes. So it was my understanding when the special permit was issued for the deck, the hours of operation were limited to 10 p.m. Unfortunately, I can't find the special permit on the Registry of Deeds. But
Which is
a year or two ago,
jazz
they had a jazz festival, and the amps were so loud that I could hear every word in my house with the windows closed. And I don't know if those special events require separate approval from you, but it reverberates off the granite ledges. So I just question whether that allowing the deck to be open to 12 p.m. makes sense.
Those, yeah, they don't go directly through us. I'm not sure who issues those for the various restaurants or institutions around here.
Well, for them to be able to have entertainment,
Yeah.
they should, just like
It's
Boo
not-
Bird did, they had to come to us. So, and we usually would impose certain restrictions. So the question is,
Well, events happen at the Legion all the time, and we don't know what they are.
no, but this is outdoors.
Okay,
And so that's a little, and music, and so that's a little different.
It does go later on to the evening.
Greg?
And they always shut down the deck at 10 p.m. until that jazz festival.
No, I don't drink later.
Greg, do you have any information on that? Oh, do you have
So we really should look up the,
Yeah, I have.
that special permit. I mean, if that's a permit condition, then that needs to be honored.
yeah,
In terms of outdoor.
So have we seen a permit
Yeah, is that
request
gonna-
for that?
is that gonna pass your desk?
I'm saying if when Sarah's saying that when the ZBA approved the deck, they limited it, they limited the hours. So we should just confirm that with the,
Oh, really?
with the minutes of the ZBA meeting, and they gave that approval.
That's like,
And then we
that's
have
like
to-
what, 30 years ago or something?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever it was.
No, I think it was like 13 years.
Okay,
No,
so then,
23 years, sorry.
All right.
so we need to figure out what that is. And, are they able to get a
Single use permit.
as Brian said, an event use permit? Of course, there's not time.
Yeah,
Well,
this is happening in what, 5 days?
Yeah, so we'd have to just, I mean, it's too late to impose anything this year, I would think.
Well, it is if they've not done.
It's,
Fine, unless we.
A decibel
all right.
restriction.
I'm not gonna-
Greg, I don't know.
I'm not gonna be the one that tells them.
Who would look up, I don't know, I mean, that's gotta go through, what, the assessor's office, or?
Well, just, we can look up the minutes in the clerk's office. And,
Can somebody do that and find out what the story is?
yes,
Thank you.
I guess
And what
time
would
is
the
of the
next-
essence, yeah, what
Yeah,
are
like
the
the
next,
next
what are the
step
next
would
steps?
Within the
be-
next 48 hours.
I mean, it's, I mean, that horse is.
Well, I mean, there was an exact similar situation in Topsfield.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah,
The
there was two-
Topsfield
yeah.
Fairgrounds were supposedly given free rein for the Topsfield Fair, but there were concerns that other events coming in from the outside were disturbing neighbors, and it was unclear what the boundaries were, what the rules were. This is a very, in my mind, analogous situation. So Greg, I think we need to know what the options are and what the next steps are.
Exactly.
yeah, I think, you know, if the event can be indoors and not outdoors, then that solved the problem, in terms of, from a permitting perspective.
With the band set up. in the parking lot behind.
Oh, they're in the parking lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
And does that also have approval from the police department to be out in the parking lot?
I'm not privy to that, I just know where they're set up.
The town parking lot?
No, that parking
that's-
lot,
Okay.
that's
Oh, in their
Legion-
parking
Legion owns
lot
that parking
behind.
Yeah.
Oh, the
So they-
behind one.
Yeah, so they set up a
behind,
stage,
okay.
I think they bring in like, usually it's a flatbed trailer as a stage. So people are on the deck, there's a food truck.
And also on the asphalt.
Right. There's a food truck, this is for the Jazz Fest.
Yes.
Right.
And people are on the deck.
Okay. All
And
right.
it aims directly west from the parking lot.
So I guess the next steps, right, John?
Yes, so let us know what the story is within the next 2 working days, where we're at. But they must have some sort of a permit that's live right now.
In what respect?
Right.
I don't think they pulled a special permit for this, do they?
I'm not aware of any permit for
No.
an outdoor.
Okay,
music
all right.
festival.
So you just have to see what the,
But that's the issue though, were they supposed to?
Correct. And yes, the answer is you
Yes.
can have.
Yes, I think the Jazz Fest was last year. In previous, I think this is outgrowth of what they used to call Woody Stock, which used to be indoors until COVID hit. So then they moved it outdoors because of COVID, and then the Jazz Fest grew out of that. So this is only the second year.
Right,
I
and
mean, outdoor
that's,
entertainment of this nature.
but that's,
Yeah.
that's the
No, I
same
get that, I
situation,
understand that, I'm
yeah,
just
right.
trying
Yeah.
historical.
So
view
let's
of this.
just
all right.
get our next steps.
See what the next step, see if there's any kind of restriction, Greg, if you can find what that is from 23 years ago.
Right, but if you're saying it's in the back parking lot, that doesn't even apply.
Because it's not on the deck. Yeah, that's
It's not on the
correct.
deck.
It's on their private property.
Well, yes, but.
But they're still supposed to pull for, even if it's on private property and have music.
Yes, they
I
might
don't
have a
know.
license. They might have
Yeah,
an
I don't
If you-
know.
If you have a wedding reception in your backyard,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
You go to your neighbors and you say,
Greg?
Well, yeah,
we're gonna have.
you're
a
invited.
party."
I know.
Right, there's a difference between having a wedding and having an event that you're trying to make money.
Yes, right.
So, this becomes a commercial enterprise.
So we need to figure this
But,
out.
yeah, who would have jurisdiction on that, Greg? I don't, within town government per se, does that still go through your office?
Well, it's our office and it's the building inspector. So
Okay.
I will,
Check, I mean, so maybe they did not have a permit last year or the year before.
Doesn't, yeah, it still doesn't mean that,
It doesn't mean that they shouldn't have,
right?
okay? But that's why there may be no history. Still, check on the deck if you would.
yes, I will.
Okay, all right. And so what's your opinion here with regard to permits for that sort of thing on private property?
I don't think they have that permission to do that. That's my gut reaction.
Could you, I don't know, is that worth checking with council on something like that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Do that as well.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay,
Are we still?
we're still on alcohol.
Yeah.
You still have the license.
Yes, okay.
Right. It's all
So
about
I
the
guess we need a motion to approve that.
A move to approve the
But don't-
application for,
We have to close the evidentiary portion first of the public hearing.
Oh, do we have to have a public hearing for this?
We had one,
We-
and now we're supposed to close the
This is
evidentiary.
We never really opened it.
okay. Move to close the evidentiary portion
Okay, although we did
of
not.
the hearing on the alcohol license for the American Legion.
Was that a holdover from the last one, I guess, from the last
Correct.
month?
It was continuation from last.
Continuation, okay, all right. That motion, Ann has a motion, a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, Ann?
Yes,
Okay, fine, all right. Now vote on the license amendment specifically?
Move to approve the, application for a license amendment.
Okay,
Second,
all right. All in favor, Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Aye.
Becky?
yes.
Ann?
Yes.
And John says yes. Okay, great. Liaisons.
Want to do those?
Who wants to
Skip 'em?
volunteer?
Or skip them for next time?
All right, we'll skip them until next time.
I think I'm here to.
Oh, you're a liaison, that's right, that's why you're here.
Yeah, I was supposed to be appointed to the CPC as liaison.
Let's see that.
That was done part of your consent.
Yeah,
No, I see.
I had an email
That was already in there.
I just have a note as appropriate, I do not,
Committee appointments, we did it.
we did committee appointments.
I'm in.
You're
You're
in.
in.
That was way back.
You're in, Dean.
Okay.
Okay,
Geez, I could have
You could have had a drink.
I could have had
Yeah,
the
you
clerk
could've-
swear me in today.
that's right.
No,
You could have had a V8.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
she's gone, all right.
You are,
Thank-
you are
thank-
relieved.
Thanks for sticking it out, though.
Yeah,
Okay, all
I
right.
thought you were just fascinated.
Yeah, I thought,
I
yeah.
know,
I was
really.
curious as to why you were here, but I wasn't impressed.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Dean.
you.
I'm only here because I
All
have
right,
to.
good. Town administrators report, Greg.
Did you wanna do liaison reports, or did that,
We'll skip that, it's 9, so, did you have something pressing in that is time sensitive, or?
I just wanted to make sure that everybody read that the collaboration group it plans to continue as a sort of think tank toward
Oh, yes,
ideas for the school committee.
yeah, for the school committee, correct.
Just very quickly, as long as. we
Okay,
don't do it.
all right, we'll do
No,
it
no,
quickly.
Parks and Rec, because apparently that's become, the USA Pickleball will be, in town next week, to start trying out different, sound mitigation, avenues. So basically Manchester is becoming a testing ground for USA Pickleball.
Okay,
All right, so that happens next week. That's about it.
okay, good. Becky, anything you wanna,
That's Kathy.
I mean, excuse me, Kathy. Kathy, Becky, that's very alliterative.
You know, we already discussed the FinCom stuff, so that's all I had to report.
Okay.
So we're good.
Good. And from my perspective, Anthony, we have a selected list of people who will test the new water meters. We've got a list of 26, we will finalize that, but I don't expect it to change by more than 1 or 2 names by the end of the week, so that'll be off and running this month. Okay. Out of over 100.
Wow.
I would want to raise that. Okay. All right, moving on to town administrators report. Greg.
Sure, thanks, John. So on the rotunda, we are moving forward with the visual simulations. The computer program they have is actually quite powerful. And you can zoom in at almost any angle, at any tide. I think you'll find it quite robust. We'll have that available to us by the 24th of August. And so you could host another forum. Your next regular meeting is the 21st, so it won't be before then. We won't have it for the 21st of August. And then your first September meeting is September 5th, day after Labor Day. It's a Tuesday. So I didn't know if you wanted to aim for something that last week of August, or wait until the 5th, or hold a special meeting either the 7th or 14th, sticking with Thursdays for special meeting. But the sooner we can hold that and have you make a final decision, the better. Just a quick update on the options. The second option, which talked about pushing it out further, it still is possible, but it will certainly be a much longer permitting process. So a permit to rebuild in place in its existing footprint is a much easier permit to obtain, probably about half the time as a permit that would request for extending it would be. I think time is a consideration. If we get one more season out of the pilings that are there, I think we'll be doing well. So it'd be great to be able to get the project constructed a year from this fall, if things could line up accordingly. Then we can make a decision in September here. We can get permitting underway. We can apply for grants in the spring, for the spring round of grant funding, and have everything in place for fall construction. So not looking for final decisions on the option tonight, but looking for dates for the next round of public discussion where we can present the visual simulations, and either you make a decision at the end of that session or at your next meeting following that public forum.
Okay. All right, well, all right.
If I may, I think having the visual stuff after Labor Day will give more people in town a chance. August is kind of a hard month to get people together to review things. And probably the day after Labor Day may not be the ideal day, but maybe the Thursday of that week.
Right.
Or the following Thursday.
Right, which is the 7th or the 14th.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're talking about a forum, Ann?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people in town want to be heard on this.
Yeah.
And they want to see the pictures.
They definitely want to see the pictures, yeah.
I agree, and I would propose the 14th, just because getting back to school, people are trying to get into a routine. It's really, that first week is kind of tough, and a lot of people take that short week vacation, for vacation as well, so.
Okay, so we'd angle for a vote on the 18th, then you're looking for 2 dates there, Greg?
Right, so if you have the public forum on the 14th, and then your next regular meeting would be the 18th.
18th, right.
You can vote on the
At which time, you know, if you're ready, which I hope you will be.
Yes.
You can make a decision on the 18th.
Right.
And that gives Tiffany enough time to get all the information.
And people are, in the summer is not something that people will be concerned about. Okay, and we did get some input, I think, at the fair.
We've gotten a lot of input.
Okay, so.
Good.
You know how some of the wind is blowing here.
So
Okay.
we plan on the 14th, is
14th,
that it?
14th, and yes, 14th with a vote on the 18th. Right, Ann?
I'm certainly there with the 14th.
Okay.
Good, like it. Then we can start concentrating on dogs on the beach.
There you go.
Okay,
Okay, good, yeah,
Continuing.
that's helpful. So one of the topics that we will need to address, I'm not looking for a decision tonight, but need you to be thinking about it, just how to address the concerns that we've heard from certainly some residents about the condition of Ocean Street and its future. You know, we were successful with one grant, but because of concerns about having abandonment be one of the options to be studied, at least along White Beach, just a short section, that project was not pursued. Future grant applications that we've submitted to try to do some design work have not been successful, but we certainly can keep trying for that. You know, the condition and how to best manage Ocean Street is certainly problematic, just in terms of its vulnerability. We are stuck between that proverbial rock and a hard place when, you know, the CONCON and regulatory bodies are not keen on having much work being done on that stretch of road without a real fully engineered and long-term plan. And yet, you know, putting down some asphalt and making some, at least even relatively minor repairs would help. So, again, we're not looking to resolve that this evening, but just put it on your to think about list. And I'll circle back with Chuck and get a few options, and we'll come back before you with some suggested next steps.
Yes, Becky?
Greg, I have a question on that. Where any major road construction, sidewalk, getting permits for something heavily fortified, you said it's very unlikely. Is this permits from the state or Concom or both? I mean, yeah, allowing,
Yeah, it would be both.
okay,
Certainly if you're constructing seawalls or fortifying seawalls or making bigger seawalls, that'll require Chapter 91. It'll involve Army Corps and in our local Concom. So it's all of the above.
okay. Is it possible at all to revisit a study to look at options again, but go out in front and explain why it's being looked into and not locking into any specific outcome? Or is that ship sailed, so to speak, or tide gone out?
Right. No, it's certainly a possibility to try that again and do a better job of communicating what the intent of the study is.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that the governance group has suggested is neighborhood talks, gatherings, and I think a neighborhood gathering of the Ocean Street people will be challenging, but entirely worth doing
Absolutely.
if we're going to try.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Well, I think
Something-
that's probably what a forum or something, a meeting on that will turn into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people on the other end of town, and they're not necessarily gonna tune into that. So is that something that gets put on the action items, to identify a time to? Can you put that on there so that we do that in sometime in the next couple of months or so?
I would suggest that we specifically invite everyone on Ocean Street and everyone on Victoria Lane. That's the right.
It's a good idea.
So, so that, because this is an issue that's of great concern to them, and assuming that they will read the cricket or check the website is not good enough for an issue of this magnitude.
Right.
Greg, in an event like that, is there someone outside of town governance that should be invited to a forum like that or discussion like that?
Yes, there are different organizations and who have experience in dealing with these kind of issues. We could.
Well, we can talk. You know, Chuck probably has an opinion on that. I know. I'm just wondering.
My feeling would be that I think that first and foremost, we hear from the people and what their concerns are, and as opposed to, you know, refuting anything or trying to,
no.
but just listen to them and get a list of their concerns and then go from there rather than
jump in right away.
that's what do you think? Anybody else?
Oh, yeah, I mean, just to make sure we're all on the same page, I feel a little undereducated on that topic and would appreciate the hearing from the residents.
I just had informal discussions with Chuck, and he says it's a long road to hoe.
Oh, yeah. It's been a problem for a long,
I guess it
long
has.
time, and just, but.
Okay, so it's on the list, right, Deb? And we'll figure out sometime in the next couple of months or so to do that. Okay.
And then lastly, just quickly, we are moving forward with working with an architect on looking at some layouts for potential senior center. And we'll be working with the architect and with the current owners of the building and seeing if we can come up with a plan that is satisfactory to all. So that'll take place over the next month. We should have those plans and by the end of the month.
By the end of August?
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay. All right, that's a good update. Union contracts.
Do we need to
So-
go?
So depending on whether or not you feel it's necessary to go to executive session, we have the 3 contracts ready for your final ratification. You have the clerical union. Primarily, the changes were the COLAs for the 3 years, plus the addition of a new step at year 16. DPW, similar COLAs, a little switching around in terms of the years, a bit of a reorg. Some of the positions were reclassified. And then again, another step was added at year 16. And then for DPW, there's also a request to have a labor management committee monitoring overtime, making sure that overtime is distributed equitably amongst all the staff. So that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. There's a 4th item. Fresh memory. Oh yeah, I already said the reclassification of a couple of positions. I did all 4. And then for the fire union, we talked about the minimum staffing target, some ability to drop lower than that minimum under extenuating circumstances, which would be lack of staff, availability at management's discretion. We do have, again, similar wage increases on all 3 contracts here, have very similar percent increases with the COLA. There is a new fitness incentive in the fire contract as well, incentivizing folks to meet some specific industry benchmarks, and it's something that would be provided once every 3 years. In summary form, it doesn't look like a whole lot of changes. It always takes quite a bit of time to get to this point. I think we're ready for your ratification, but if you do have some questions and concerns that you feel would be better done prior to taking a vote, and you want to do that in executive session, then it would be appropriate to move into executive session.
Any questions on any? I recall these discussions.
Not on my part.
Except the fitness incentive, that's new to me.
One would think that they have to be fit to do the job.
And any thoughts?
I would have been happy, yeah, it's too late.
Do we need to go to
Yeah,
executive
that's
session?
the question.
That's
Are
the
these,
question.
Are we okay with these numbers and arrangements as they stand?
If the board generally feels it's okay, I'm okay.
Okay. Well,
I trust Greg's.
yeah, and we did have
We
discussions
discussed
on these
this, yeah.
a couple of months or so ago.
Mhm.
New COLAs, what the ultimate goal of the 3 years was.
Okay.
So do we need to have a formal motion to approve?
You need a formal
that?
motion for this? I don't know that we want the contracts to review based on your comments here.
So yes, a formal motion to approve going forward with the new contracts for the 3 different unions is on the table, would be appropriate.
Do you need 3 separate motions or one to cover all 3?
So you can do one, you can do it all in one.
Okay. Any
I move to
opinions on
approve
that?
the contracts as described by Greg for the Federal Union, the DPW union, and the firefighters union.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on these contracts? Okay, ready to vote? Ryan?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Becky?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
And John votes yes. So I think we're set with those, Greg.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate
Great.
it, appreciate.
Well,
appreciate
thank you.
your
I
patience.
know that it's like the duck on the water. We go through all of this and we have a little bit of a discussion, but that's only a small amount of what goes behind all of this for you to get to a point where it's gonna fit together.
That's a great
I got a
analogy.
question. Greg, are these your last contracts?
That I will negotiate, yes, they are.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Right.
We'll have the police contract next year, they're off cycle.
Oh, the play,
There
okay.
you go.
Good.
You want a motion to
A
adjourn?
motion to adjourn,
So
please.
moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And it says aye, I think.
Aye, aye,
Okay.
aye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good
All right.
night.
Yeah.
Good night. Thank you.